Hyuk was lucky to be born into a family where his grandfather was a well-known loan shark. His family owned a massive fortune, making them the richest in the land of kimchi. Ironically, since childhood, he had to live with his grandmother, never feeling the love of his parents. Moreover, he didn't inherit his grandfather's estate, and wasn't recognized as a member of the family. However, one day, Hyuk was tragically betrayed, with one of the prime suspects being his maternal relatives. Somehow, he miraculously came back to life and returned to 1999, when he was just a high school student. Will he continue to endure humiliation, serving his uncles in this new life, or will he rise up and fight for his own justice? Let's wait and see. On a luxurious yacht drifting in the vast ocean, a news broadcast was heard. It's been a year since the CEO of the DM investment company, Chairman Inso, disappeared with a huge sum of money from investors' funds and loans. However, the police are still facing difficulties in their investigation, as they have not yet identified the whereabouts of Chairman Inso. Some say that Inso has fled to another country. The victims, who lost varying amounts of money, from small to large, are demanding the police conduct an investigation and make immediate arrests. According to what reporters have recorded, there are hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets, calling for the arrest of those shielding the Inso case and the Dudak faction. The justice system must wake up and save the victims. The police are currently requesting a red notice from Interpol. A man sat on the yacht grinning with delight upon hearing the news. "You must be joking. Now what can they do?" he said as he sat down to drink and enjoy the atmosphere here. "Those who are fooled are the real fools." He is the former CEO of DM Finance, Chairman Inso, the man who has been mentioned the most in the news lately. He shows no regret or remorse for his wrongdoings. People as smart as us will take all the money. The sky had also darkened. He lay in the room sleeping soundly, sleeping so deeply that nothing in the world mattered. Suddenly someone called out, waking him from his drowsy sleep. Chairman Inso, wake up." He jolted in shock when he saw a stranger in his room. The person asked, "Stealing other people's money? Does it make you happy, and then you travel the world on this luxurious yacht?" Inso trembled and asked, "Who are you?" The stranger stood up abruptly and asked, "Have you already forgotten my voice? How disappointing." He froze for a few seconds, seemingly recognizing the intruder in his room. "Hyuk, Director Hyuk." The man confidently approached Inso's bed and directly said, "Chairman Inso, I'm here to reclaim the money you borrowed from Tyson." From a once outspoken person, he now hesitated like a coward, Director Hyuk, about that matter. Right after that, he shouted out, "Security, security!" Unfortunately, his bodyguards were knocked unconscious by Hyuk's men, lying senseless on the floor. He reassured him, "Stay calm, Chairman. We're not here to take you back to Korea. We are just here to get our money back. 150 billion won principal and 320.2 billion won unpaid interest. The amount you need to transfer is 470.2 billion won. Inso was shocked to the core when he heard he had to pay such a large amount. What, 470 billion? Hyuk was generous enough to find a way for Chairman Inso to pay him. At the current exchange rate, it would be around $258 million. He could transfer it. So it would only take $350 million. He began to kneel and beg, "You, I have no money. I already bought this yacht with that money." In a flash, Inso turned and yelled furiously, "There's no way the interest in 1 year can be double the principal, you thieves. If you really want it, just take the yacht. I don't care anymore." Hyuk sat frowning, glancing at him as if contemplating something. The yacht remained still. At the side of the boat, a long chain was lowered into the sea. Hyuk stood above, smoking like a cool chairman. He stood silently, gazing into the distance, then turned around and ordered the subordinates to pull him up. Immediately the chain was swiftly pulled up. So it turns out, Hyuk used this rope to tie up Inso, and then threw him into the sea as a way to punish someone as arrogant as him. His entire body was soaked. Sitting outside the boat, he listed out all the money that Chairman Inso has acquired through embezzlement. "I know that he has misappropriated." He kept denying it. "I don't know. I don't have any money, really. This yacht is the only asset I have. Trust me." Hyuk continued, saying he still had 120 billion in Switzerland, bringing the total to 470 billion won. "You can transfer money right from your laptop, right? The satellite network from this yacht is very fast." He started getting confused when being passive, "You absolutely cannot." Hyuk did not hesitate to threaten him, saying that if he became shark bait, nothing would be impossible. Forced into a corner, Chairman Inso stubbornly said, "But that money, I'd rather die than live without it." He strained to speak and negotiate. "All right, I will transfer the principal amount, the 150 billion kwan principal, I will transfer it. So just forget the interest. With the amount of interest I've already paid, you'll still profit even if you only collect the principal. All other investors are putting in their money, aren't they?" However, in response to his offer was Hyuk's terrifying silence. He ordered his subordinate Sangi to bring the chairman down again. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 bodyguards dragged Chairman Inso away. He screamed, desperately trying to save his own life. Wait, don't rush. If I die, you won't be able to find your money." Hyuk sat thinking about the words he had just said. However, his answer shocked him. even though we couldn't find the money, the person who embezzled Taeson's money. People need to know what will happen to them if they do the same. The guy bluntly ordered, "Bring him down." Inso could only scream in despair, "No. Wait, Director Hyuk, hold on. No matter how much you beg, you'll end up being thrown into the sea in the end." The entire sea became eerily quiet. A while later, he was finally pulled up after being brutally tormented several times. Hyuk smiled happily and announced, "President, $350 million have been transferred without any issues." After receiving the full payment, he and his subordinate bowed before Inso and respectfully said, "Thank you for using Taeson." He was furious. "You people, I earned that money like a dog and you took everything." Hyuk, after receiving the money, became friendlier and spoke more gently. "Please contact us if you need further assistance, dear customer." As soon as he finished speaking, he and everyone else climbed into the canoe and returned to the mainland. Now, only Chairman Inso remains alone on that yacht in the middle of the sea. Another boat suddenly appeared, moving toward his yacht. The blinding light from the boat made it impossible for him to see. What is this? In a flash, Chairman Inso's yacht was surrounded from all sides, and the people on board announced to him through a loudspeaker, "We are the Philippine Coast Guard. The Philippine Coast Guard, you are wanted by Interpol. Don't move. If you resist, we will shoot." He gritted his teeth in frustration, realizing he had fallen into a trap, losing both his money and getting caught by the police. He shouted one last time before having to eat government meals, "You bastards." The evening at a mansion, inside everything was designed with luxury, reflecting the wealth of a family. On the wall hangs a portrait of a powerful loan shark boss, Taeson, looking extremely authoritative. Everyone gathered in the living room for a family meeting. Chairman Soman of Taeson Company poured a drink while praising his nephew, Hyuk. "Have a glass. You did well this time." The modest young man replied, "No, sir. I was just following company directives and policies." He placed his hand on the young man's shoulder and said, "You found someone who was fleeing across the world, on a yacht, and you even recovered the interest. Very good." The vice president of the company, Sohan, also agreed, "Yes, thanks to Hyuk, our company avoided a significant loss. 470 billion won is not a small amount." The eldest son of Soman, named Jigun, sat silently on the chair. Mr. Soma smiled and confirmed, "The only person we can trust now is Hyuk. Very good, very good." The young man hurriedly denied, "No, Chairman, I'm just doing my job." He reminded him, "I told you to call us uncle when it's just us. We're all family." Sohan laughed and added, "That's right, the only son of your sister, Miseo, Hyuk." Soma became serious and said, "Remember this, Hyuk, everyone here carries the bloodline of my father, Taeson. That means we are all family." He glanced at the painting on the wall and silently said, "My grandfather, the legendary moneylender of Myeongdong, Taeson. In the past, even the wealthy had to borrow money, bowing before the richest man in South Korea. People call him the controller of the usury industry in Korea, the king of usury. Cash, investment shares, stocks, real estate, foreign exchange funds, just the known amount, thousands of trillions of kwon. He left nothing for himself, his granddaughter. The assets were inherited by his biological daughter, the two brothers So-man and So-han, and their descendants." Throughout the entire conversation, Chi-kwan looked very bored, and he seemed uninterested in such matters. Soma asked, "But Chi-kwan, what are you doing? I haven't seen you at the company for days. Don't you see Hyuk struggling? Have you found Dunn, the person who embezzled money for the apartment construction yet?" He nonchalantly replied, "Regarding that matter, I think I'll find him soon." Soman couldn't control his emotions and yelled at his son, "You idiot, how many times have you asked for more time, and last time you missed him because you were high on drugs?" Chi-kwan, the only son of Soman, is the eldest son of the Cheon family. The untalented and greedy, addicted and privileged, Mr. Soman covered his face with his hand and sadly said, "How pitiful, how shameful in front of Hyuk. Hyuk, you've really worked hard, you must be tired, so take some rest." He politely replied, "All right, thank you, I'll take my leave now." Then he quietly walked away alone. As soon as he stepped into the yard, he heard them laughing and chatting happily in the living room. 30 years ago, I also tried my best to be recognized as a member of the family. I've done all the chores and everything asked of me, but I still can't become part of the Cheon family." He had no choice but to drive back to his house. The car sped smoothly down the highway. His face clearly shows sadness. Hyuk looked at the notification on his phone. Turns out today is Hyuk's grandmother's death anniversary. The only family I had when I was little after my parents passed away was my grandmother. Memories of his childhood with his grandmother suddenly rushed back to his mind. Every time they took a bath, they would have a lot of fun together. Even when drinking milk, the two are always side by side, inseparable every moment. My grandmother passed away 30 years ago on this exact day. He stopped by a convenience store on the way, bought a bottle of soju, a bag of apples, and a few cartons of milk that she loved to drink when she was alive. After paying, he took the bag and left. As soon as he stepped out of the store, the phone in his pocket rang. "Sangi, what's wrong?" On the other end of the line, someone reported, "I found Director Don of Chidun Construction in Aicheon. The chairman has ordered his immediate arrest." He hesitated before answering, saying it should have been Chiquan's task, but Sangui insisted, the chairman ordered you to do this. He anxiously asked again, Chairman, right? He firmly confirmed yes. Finally, you had to accept the mission. All right, I will come immediately. At a construction site, after receiving that phone call, Hayuk quickly ran to the place Sangui had mentioned. He took out his phone and called him, Sangui, I'm here. Where are you? As soon as he finished speaking, someone appeared in front of him. But it wasn't Sangui, it was an entire gang. He arrived. Hayuk looked with a confused expression, wondering what was going on. The crowd started splitting into small groups to surround him. He grew increasingly confused. What are you doing? Where is Sangui? He came up from behind and said, Hey, I apologize for calling you so late. He asked in an irritated tone, Hey Sangui, what do you think you're doing? A car is speeding towards where you are standing. The driver blatantly rammed into Hayuk, knocking him to the ground. Hayuk clenched his teeth, suppressing the pain inside, and slowly got up. As soon as he looked up, a stick swiped across his face. Luckily, he quickly dodged the sudden attack. Right after that, he stood up and charged straight at the guy. Knock him flat on his back. After taking down one guy, he turned around, punched the face of the underling standing behind. In just a split second, he single-handedly took down 2 opponents in a row. Another group continued to charge forward. They attacked him relentlessly with baseball bats and weapons. Because of the pain, he collapsed onto the ground. Sangui, the person he always trusted, now stood before him with an indifferent attitude. Hayuk glared at the traitor and cursed, Sangui, you bastard. However, Sangui just stood silently, staring at him. A subordinate struck the young man on the nape, knocked him out cold, leaving him sprawled on the ground. Hyuk was beaten so badly that his face was covered in wounds. He slowly opened his eyes after the earlier coma. It's cruel when they tie him up and force him into the car. Even if you try, you can't budge or free yourself. He was even more stunned by the scene before him. In front of this bridge lies the vast, endless ocean. Hayuk looked around in astonishment at everyone. Seeing Sangui still refusing to stop his wrongful actions, he tried to shout loudly, Sangui, you bastard, what are you doing? Let me go right now. He answered honestly, I received the order. Make Hayuk retire. He questioned him, Who gave you the order, the chairman or Suhan? Is it Chigun? Sangui insisted on not revealing who hired him to do this. Does it matter who gave me the order? Don't you know? That we are merely followers, doing what we are told to do. The last words he sent to you were just 2, goodbye. After that statement, the bridge was raised and tilted to one side. Everyone joined forces to push the car into the sea, push. What comes will come, and by the force of inertia, the car plummeted straight into the sea at a dizzying speed. Hayuk sat in the car, screaming desperately, wait. But in the end, what had to happen happened. His car slowly sank into the deep sea. In a flash, the car was flooded with water. More than half of the car was submerged in seawater. Inside the car, Hayuk tried to lift his head, wondering if he would die like this after being as loyal as a dog to the Cheon family. Can't believe I'm going to die uselessly like this after being used. The bag of food that he bought to offer for his grandmother's memorial had also fallen out, but he could only watch in helplessness. The bottle of milk also gradually sank to the bottom of the deep sea. Hayuk felt extremely sad and could only say to himself, Grandma, I'm sorry. I promised to take care of your memorial, but right now, I'm on my way to see you, Grandma. Sunlight shines brightly through the layers of clouds. Hayuk opened his eyes wide and looked up at the sky. Strangely, he wore a high school uniform and lay on the beach like someone who had lost his soul. As soon as he regained his senses, Hayuk sat up abruptly. What's happening? Am I still alive? Suddenly, a guy appeared out of nowhere and kicked him headfirst into the sea. He scrambled to his feet. What the heck was that? Hyuk suddenly realized what was happening right in front of him. He stared wide-eyed in horror, still unable to believe the truth. A group of students is physically pushing each other chaotically. Even paradise is this chaotic. A chaotic brawl is unfolding before his eyes. They fought fiercely. Suddenly, someone was kicked hard. He fell at the feet of Kim Hywook. The continuous sound of cursing echoed. The chaotic scene left him stunned for a moment. But what is this situation? Suddenly, a curse came from behind, bastard. Then someone rushed forward intending to punch him. Hyuk quickly struck first, punching him in the chin. Make this guy fall flat into the water. After that, he was surprised to feel his body so light, just like when he was young. Then 2 other guys rushed in and yelled, You bastard Kim Hywook. You looked up at them. Then he raised his leg and kicked someone in the stomach. The man fell backward, while the other one gaped in astonishment. Hayuk quickly ran toward another person. Circle around and kick his shoulder blade. The others stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Then they got angry, this guy, and the whole group rushed at him. Hayuk easily took down each one without any difficulty. You bumped into their chin. The body moved swiftly, dodging the opponent's punches. Then wait for the right moment to strike a decisive blow, leaving them powerless and unable to resist. After a while, most of the people were on the ground, with only a few still standing. He glanced over at them. At that moment, the 2 men began to feel afraid. Hyuk glared, thinking, Get lost, you bastards. The 2 turned pale, standing frozen in place. Then they quickly ran away, and the people lying on the ground also got up and scattered in all directions. Kim Hyuk then sat down on the sandy beach. He let out a sigh. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "Animals, where do you think you're going?" He still had a handful of sand and threw it at them. Then he turned back and asked, "Hyuk, are you okay? I was planning to flirt with some girls, but it's all dudes here. Hyuk, you're sweating. Want to smoke?" He looked at him thinking, what the heck, is this kid really a high school student? Suddenly he noticed the name tag on his shirt, Lee Eung-so, his close friend from high school. That's Lee Eung-so. Then another person came over, casually put an arm around his shoulder and said, "Just like always, Hyuk is the best at fighting, taking them all on by himself." He looked on in surprise. In my mind, I remembered Bak Hun-sung, also a close friend from high school. His dad was a cop, so whenever we messed up, he would be the one to clean it up. Then he asked, "But where are we?" Eung-so was puzzled. "What are you talking about?" "At Gali, where else?" You paused, Gali. He saw you dazed, ruffled your hair and asked, "What's wrong?" Suddenly using a Seoul accent and asking where this is. "Did you hit your head hard earlier?" "Your head still looks fine." Tough as a rock. Hyuk continued to ask, "What day is it today? What year?" Eung-so replied, "Of course, it was September 21st, 1990. He pulled your hair back, muttering, "You really hit your head. You should be in pain, right?" Meanwhile, he silently contemplated, September 21st, 1990. Suddenly Hyuk sensed something and turned around. It turned out to be a balloon pulling a banner that read, 90, Gali Beach Camp. Vehicles in the distance move about, bustling. You can't believe it as you recall, clearly remembering that you had died after falling into the sea. But I returned to 30 years ago. Hoon-sung, who was sitting next to him, suddenly stood up, brushed off his pants and said, "I'm starving." Eung-so suggested, "Let's make a bowl of ramen. My treat." Suddenly Hyuk remembered something, thinking, "Wait a minute, September 21st, 1990. Then he suddenly stood up, ran quickly in one direction. The two, confused, called out, "Hyuk, where are you going?" He was running while clenching his teeth and thinking, on that day, today, his grandmother, his only family. Run as fast as you can to get home. Thinking back to 30 years ago when the door opened, he saw his grandmother lying on the ground. He thought, this is the day she's leaving. She passed away from a heart attack. Hyuk knelt before her memorial tablet and cried a lot. This time, you are determined not to let it happen again. They said if she had been discovered a little earlier and emergency services were called, she would have survived. Run nonstop until sunset. Finally, you made it back to your home. At this moment, his grandmother is walking down the stairs. Seeing Hyuk, she happily asked, "School's out already? You're home early." The warm hand of Ba gently held his. Hyuk couldn't hold back the tears, his voice trembling as he called out, "Grandma." Memories of being cared for and cherished by my grandmother as a child flooded back. Gently nurturing and raising him bit by bit, the grandmother asked, "Why are you breathing so heavily? Were you hungry and ran home?" He sobbed and replied, "Yes." She worriedly asked, "Why are you crying? What's wrong?" Hyuk tried to hold back and replied, "Nothing. It's just that I just miss you so much." Then he hugged his grandmother tightly. She patted his back gently, smiling kindly. Suddenly, he missed her. Seeing Hyuk crying like that, it felt like her grandchild had become a child again. At that moment, whether you cried or laughed, you were very handsome. When did you grow up so much? Wipe your tears. Then said, "Ba, there's no time here. Let's go to the hospital right away." Ba was surprised, "Huh? Hospital? You said she might faint any time, so go to the hospital for a checkup." The grandmother was surprised. Why go there? She wasn't sick. Hyuk hurriedly said, "Go quickly, ma'am, you could die." The old lady was puzzled. Why would I die? She will only pass away after seeing her grandchild get married and raise children. So don't worry. Go inside, I'll cook quickly. Hyuk was worried, confused, and unsure of what to do. Then the meal was served. The old lady said, "Here, eat slowly. Isn't it a bit few dishes?" You replied, "No, they're all my favorites. I'll eat well." Then you buried your head and ate ravenously. She said, "My goodness, slow down. People will think you've been starved for years. Wait here, Grandma will prepare the corn milk you like." Hyuk was eating while tears streamed down his face, thinking, yes, all I need is a simple meal cooked by my grandmother. Why am I working like a dog for Taesan Cheon? You enjoy the familiar meal that you haven't had in a long time. Suddenly, there was the sound of something breaking. Hyuk rushed out in a panic and saw his grandmother lying on the ground, the scene identical to his previous life. The old woman's face was pale, her breath faint. Hyuk shouted, "Grandma!" Then he quickly took her to the hospital. The elderly woman was rushed to the emergency room immediately. At this point, the doctor said, "If you had been a little late, things would have gone very badly. We will conduct further tests, but it seems that surgery is necessary. If left untreated, my grandmother could faint at any moment." He worriedly looked at his grandmother. Then looking down at the coins in his hand, he thought, "Not long ago, I made hundreds of billions, but this is all I have now." Suddenly, Eung-so appeared, took out the money, and paid the hospital fees. "Here, use this to settle the bill." He said, "This morning I just received an allowance from my dad." Hyuk thought, Eung-so's dad also owns a big adult entertainment company in the main district of Namdong. He replied, thanks, I'll pay you back soon. He said, hey, don't even talk about paying back for things like this, that's your grandma's hospital bill, and the times we ate at your house were worth tens of thousands of won. Hun-sung also said, don't worry about that anymore, take care of her, we'll visit often. Eung-so said, but are you really okay? What about the treatment and medication? Hyuk remembered the doctor's words. It seems that surgery is necessary. If left untreated, her grandmother could faint at any time. So, how much does the surgery cost? I don't know exactly, but it will be around 10 million kwon. You think 10 million kwon before I die, it's nothing. But at this moment, a few coins in hand are all I have. Then he went to the public phone booth. Insert a coin into the machine. Then she dialed the number thinking, one way to cover my surgery costs is... The person on the other end picked up the phone. This is Chang Dong, hello. Hello, I am Kim Hyuk, I have a message for Chairman Cheon Taesan. Please let him know that Kim Hyuk, the son of his only daughter, Cheon Miseo, wants to meet his grandfather. At Dahan Busan Hospital, Hyuk was standing on the rooftop, lost in thought about many things. In 1990, before skyscrapers appeared, this was exactly Busan as I remember it. I actually went back to 1990. But will I be killed again? In the next 30 years? The most likely suspect is my uncle, Chairman So-man. He's the only one who could command his subordinates to kill him. But why? I'm quite sure that at that time I was still useful to him. Maybe it's someone else. You name each suspect one by one. It could also be So-han. Jigun, who could it be? Who could kill me? Anyway, this is my chance. The opportunity to destroy the Cheon family and take over the Taehan Corporation. Suddenly, a voice called from behind, Hey you! He turned around in surprise. A guy sitting on the bench puffing a cigarette said, Hey you, I'm calling you, come here. You wonder, huh? Which name is this? He asked, What's your given name? He asked again, Why do you ask, guessing in his mind, a thug? He said, That bastard wants what? Why is he so difficult, huh? A fat guy walked over and said, You lost, he replied, Maybe. The brat, talking to adults like that, Hyuk was thinking exactly the same as him. You said, Shouldn't you introduce your name before asking someone else's name? He tilted his head back and sighed, Oh my god. Then he said, Forget it, I'm Bok Dong-soo. Bok Dong-soo, have you ever heard my name? Hyuk thought to himself, Bok Dong-soo? I've heard about him. He was the second in command of the Sasung gang, ruling Dung district in Busan. He's a legendary figure. Within just 5 years of joining the organization, he was recognized as the gang's heir. But around this time, in 1999, during the fight against crime, he was blamed for all the crimes of his boss while the police were hunting him down. You remember the newspaper from years ago, the president declared war on crime, the president announced a national campaign, mobilizing all powers to eliminate crime according to the Constitution. He was found brutally murdered in a motel at just 29 years old. Seeing you silent for a while, he said, Don't you really know me? You said you didn't know if he was the owner of the comic book store. Dong-soo said, Whatever, I've told you my name, now it's your turn. You replied Kim Hyuk is my name. He said, Kim Hyuk, Kim Momo, that's the name of the murderer. You think this crazy kid? Then he asked, Are you the good kid everyone's talking about in room 405? You asked, What? He said, The whole hospital's buzzing about you. How you take care of the lady. How you follow her every word. You're upset. She's the only family I have. It's only natural. Dong-soo smirked. Right, it's obvious. Then he continued, Still in school, huh? Judging by your uniform, you must be at Dongsung Vocational High, right? The guy replied, Yeah, what about you? Are you a thug? He pointed at his face, surprised, saying, Me? No, why would you think that? You replied, looking at his condition, he seemed to have just been stabbed and taken to the hospital. He patted the wound and said, Kid, when a man steps into the world, getting stabbed a few times is normal. A child like you wouldn't understand. Adults all have things like this. Suddenly he sat up straight and asked, Kid, aren't you afraid of me, standing in front of me and acting so normal? The boy replied, Should I be afraid of you? Dong-soo rubbed his forehead. You're really getting on my nerves, kid. You said if you're done talking, can I leave now? He replied, Get lost. You turned away, and he immediately teased, Kim Momo, take care of her. See you later. You muttered under your breath. That scoundrel. Going downstairs, he thought, Bok Dong-soo of the Sasung gang. At this point, the gang wasn't yet nationwide, but it wasn't small either. One day he might be useful to me. After that, he entered his grandmother's hospital room. At this moment, someone is already standing in the room. Seeing you come in, the old woman said, Hyuk, someone is here to see you. The man turned around and said, Kim Hyuk. You looked at him and immediately recognized that it was Director Ha. The two people stared at each other in silence. Then he said, Go out and take a walk. Then the two went outside. They sat down at a nearby cafe. He introduced himself, I'm Ha Eung-hun, I work for Chairman Cheon. Then he handed out his business card. Take it, thinking in his mind, the right arm of Grandpa, Director Ha Eung-hun. He was the soulmate he trusted until the moment he died. In a past life, he was the one who told me the story of my mother's father, Cheon Taihan, at my grandmother's funeral. He said, "I need you to go with me to Seun," and, before he could finish, you interrupted, "Why doesn't the chairman go himself?" He was surprised when he heard that. He insisted on knowing. He thought to himself, how can he be so calm? Those eyes and that attitude don't match his age. It feels too natural. It can't be an act. Then Eunghun replied, "The president is very busy. He doesn't have time to come meet you." Hyuk said, "I didn't ask him to come meet me. I'm talking about my mother, his daughter Kim Mi-seo," thinking to myself, of course I know he won't come. He might be surprised by his own boldness in asking him to come here. You continued, "He doesn't even visit his mother's grave, does he? If the chairman wants to meet me, he needs to meet my mother first." Eunghun was even more surprised when he heard you say that. Hyuk thought that in his previous life, he had no choice but to follow their orders, because at that time, he was nothing more than an orphan child. At that time, I was just an orphan, nothing more, nothing less. You remember the day your grandmother passed away? Director Ha came to the funeral and said to Hyuk, "We will take care of the funeral expenses. When the funeral is over, come to Seon to meet the chairman." He continued, "The chairman told you not to worry about survival if you follow his words." Hyuk reflected, realizing that at that time he had no choice, and without his help, he would have had to drop out of school. But this time it won't happen. This time I'll be different because I understand him now. Returning to reality, he told the director, "Please convey the message to him. If he wants to meet me, he needs to come here himself." After that he bowed and said goodbye to Director Ha. "I'll take my leave now. Director Ha Eunghun, take care on your way home." At this moment, a single thought swirled in his mind. What is this overwhelming presence he's radiating? I feel anxious. He watched Hyuk's figure disappear, thinking to himself, according to the report I received, he's just a troublemaker who goes around picking fights. Could there be some mistake? The only daughter of Chairman Cheon Taesan, Kim Mi-seo, her son, Kim Hyuk, he is not like an ordinary child. A moment later, at Dahan Hospital, Hyuk's grandmother looked at him in shock, then suddenly raised her voice. "What? The chairman told you to go to Seun?" He immediately replied, "Yes, I told him he needed to visit his mother first. His daughter has been gone for 17 years, and he hasn't visited her grave once. It's ridiculous." Seeing this, his grandmother gently said, "Oh my, Hyuk, do you know what kind of person your mother's father is?" He replied, "I know, he does business in Seoul. I called them using the phone number you hid from me, the one you used to contact his people, right?" At this point your grandmother was surprised. How did you? However, she didn't intend to scold him but gently advised, "You must be kind to him." Hyuk asked in confusion, "Why?" "I don't want to see him after the way he abandoned us for the past 17 years. Hearing that, his grandmother stammered, "You still can't do that, Hyuk, Grandma." Before she could finish speaking, he hugged her tightly and said, "Don't worry about that. Just take care of your health. As long as you're here, I don't need anyone else." He thought to himself, Grandma, the one who loves him the most. In a previous life, I had to say goodbye to Grandma without a single word. But this time I'll make you happy. Transition in Seoul. At the luxurious mansion of the Cheon family, Chairman Taesan told Director Ha, "If you want to meet him, we have to go there ourselves." Is that what he said? The director immediately replied, "Yes, Chairman. He said he would meet you if you visit his mother's grave." Hearing that, the chairman smirked and said, "That's absurd." He stroked his beard, puffed on his cigar, and began to wonder if the kid was brave or just plain stupid. Then he told Director Ha, "All right, the kid succeeded in piquing my interest. I will go to Busan and see what kind of person it is." He slowly stood up and continued, "If it's useful, we'll make it work tirelessly like a slave for our family." Early the next morning, in front of the school gate, students were getting ready to enter their classrooms as usual. Hyuk opens the door to the classroom. Suddenly Eungso called out loudly, startling him, "Hey Hyuk, you're here already?" Eungso looked at him and asked, "Is Grandma feeling better?" He went back to his desk and replied, "Yeah, thanks to you. She was just discharged from the hospital." Eungso's face lit up as he asked, "It's been a while since you've been to school. How about we skip class and go play billiards?" He pulled out the notebook, his expression calm as he replied, "Messing around?" "You know it's been a long time since I came to school," he thought to himself, thinking about sitting in class after 30 years. "You keep talking, so we need to prepare the lesson." His friend sitting next to him was suddenly shocked to see his close buddy studying again after such a long time. Hyuk finished speaking, and the astonished gazes of the classmates all turned toward him. Eungso stammered, "Hyuk, what happened to you?" Then, he suddenly rushed in and hugged you, crying loudly with confusion. Hyuk was looking at the book and studying. It's only 19. His face showed discomfort as he thought, now remembering that during school, he was always placed last in priority because he only started studying after meeting his grandfather. You remember the past, in some mansion somewhere. Two people appeared in the room, Taesan and Hyuk, their faces lowered to the ground. The boy looked a bit anxious and worried. "He's looking at you with a serious expression." Taesan suddenly stood up and cursed the boy, calling him useless, making him look up at him. He turned around, glanced at him and said, "Listen, from now on, you have only one goal, Korea Law University." He continued, "Even though it's obvious you don't stand a chance, I'll consider it a challenge to decide if you're someone of value," he said, leaving you with a slightly bewildered expression as you looked at him. He continued, "At least I won't let you starve while you're still in my house." Taesan said, "This is your last chance, but if you fail, the relationship between the Cheon family and you ends here." Hyuk thought that, at that moment, to survive and gain his recognition, he had to get into Korea's law school. "You keep thinking, I studied like crazy and got accepted, I could work under Ong Go-ai." He silently thought, but since then, he had been ruthlessly exploited by the Cheon family as a servant with a blood connection to them. Back to the present, you write while thinking, but this time it's different, I'll study for my new goal. Transition, in the hallway outside the classroom. Suddenly Back grabbed the baseball bat and shouted loudly, "You guys, class is about to start, why aren't you back in class yet?" The teacher walked into the classroom and loudly said, "Class president." He slammed the black notebook on the teacher's desk, still holding the volleyball stick in his hand. The class president stood up and called out. Everyone gathered and bowed to the teacher. All the students in the class bowed and said in unison, "Hello, teacher." The teacher suddenly called out, "Kim Hyuk, come here." Hyuk looked up instinctively when the teacher called his name. He went to the teacher, his face angry as he held a baseball bat in both hands and shouted, "Lie down!" The teacher suddenly raised the stick, touched the boy's head, and questioned him, "How many days have you skipped school?" His face serious as he looked at the teacher. The teacher angrily looked at him and continued to ask, "Do you think school is a park where you can come and go as you please?" Hyuk bowed his head and said, "Sorry, I have to take care of Grandma." "You didn't even finish your sentence before the teacher slapped you." The teacher angrily said, "Indeed, a filial illegitimate child." You just stood there without any reaction, letting the teacher slap and curse at you, saying that a troublemaker like you could never take care of her. No way. You were probably just out drinking somewhere, right? The teacher turned back, grabbed his golf club, still furious as he looked at him and asked, "How dare you spew such nonsense?" The teacher loudly signaled to him, "Lie down quickly." Hyuk looked seriously at the teacher and thought, "Oh, I remember now, the first-year homeroom teacher, the reason he has that nickname." Seeing his student staring at him, the teacher slapped him again, raising his voice. "Are you daring to look at me like that? Are you crazy?" The student continued to think, "It's obvious this man abuses students like animals." The teacher's face was extremely irritated, his hand raised high as if ready to slap him again, and the teacher continued, "I told you to lie down." His face was angry, head down, deep in thought. He was probably just over 31 at this point. The way he treated me had another reason behind it. He recalled that the man blatantly asked her for a bribe during his visit earlier this year. I stopped her from giving the 10,000 won she had worked so hard to earn, and that's when the teacher began beating me whenever he got the chance, throughout my freshman year. Returning to reality, the teacher gave him another slap, loudly asking, "What the hell are you doing? I told you to lie down." But he still stood there ignoring the teacher's curses or slaps. You lie down in a push-up position, while the teacher, holding a stick in both hands, looks at you and asks, "You think I don't know you're always out there picking fights, huh?" The teacher hit him hard on the buttocks and humiliated him. "Kids like you will grow up to be thugs, am I right, you piece of trash?" Teacher was about to strike again when another teacher rushed in, his face filled with anxiety and concern, saying, "They back." Teacher Back noticed the serious expression on the other teacher's face and asked with a worried look, "What's the matter, Vice Principal?" He asked Teacher Back, "Is there a student in this class named Kim Hyuk?" Teacher Back was surprised when he heard the Vice Principal unintentionally saying, "Huh?" As for Hyuk, after hearing it, he glanced up at the Vice Principal. The whole class of students looked out at the schoolyard, where a shiny black car was parked. Next to the car was Eung-hun, looking serious, waiting for someone. Eung-hun saw Hyuk approaching, immediately opened the car door, and with a cheerful expression invited him, "Is this Kim Hyuk? Please come in." You slowly got into the car, causing everyone in the classroom to be extremely chaotic. Teacher Back stood in front of the class, his face turning pale, his eyes filled with fear, stammering, "What?" Suddenly, a student standing next to Teacher Back exclaimed, "Wow, is that an imported car?" Right now, as he was about to sit down, he suddenly noticed the man in the car was Taesan, sitting and reading the newspaper with a very serious expression. Hyuk was surprised, frozen for 3 seconds. He thought to himself, "Cheon Taesan?" At that moment, he glanced over at him. Eung-hun is still standing outside the car, hands clasped in front, face expressionless. In the car, Taesan suddenly asked him, "Are you the son of Misio?" You look at him and think, "Taesan, my grandfather, it seems this is how we meet again. The last time I saw him was a day before he passed away 20 years ago." Hyuk replied, "Yes, my father is Kim Taso, and my mother is Cheon Misio." The grandfather suddenly smiled, his face showing a hint of suspicion as he looked at him. He glanced at you and asked, "You told me to come here in person to meet you, right? That's why I'm here." He turned and asked, Have you visited my mother's grave yet? Taesan replied, yeah, I'm here. His face showed a bit of sadness as he bowed his head and said, I heard that since Mom passed away he hasn't visited once. I think it's right that he visited Mom before coming to see me. You continued speaking, and my grandmother, who raised me, is not well, so I can't leave her alone. I won't apologize because that's already very clear. His face suddenly darkened. Taesan glanced at him and thought, look at this kid. A young man like him doesn't seem to be afraid in front of me at all. He asked him, maybe you know about me. You looked at him with a serious gaze and thought, I know him very well. You remember the legend of the South Korean private lending industry, who came to the South during the war, started as a laborer, and became a powerful figure in politics and economics in 1970. No one, whether it was Chaebo or a politician at that time, didn't borrow money from him. Even in the 1990s he ruled the country with trillions of won in underground money, the loan shark king, Cheon Taesan. Returning to reality, he replied, a bit. I heard you run a business. Taesan looked at him and said, I run a small private lending business in Seoul. Do you know what a private lender does? You listened to him and thought to yourself, that's not a small business, Grandpa. He continued anyway, what do you want to see me for? What do you want? He bowed his head, covered his face with his hands and thought, there's only one thing I want, Halabeoji. Under his face was a smug expression as he looked at the man and thought, what I need to bring down the Cheon family is money. In the car, Hyuk is covering his face with his hand, glancing at the man, Taesan, who is also looking at him. The only thing on his mind now is money. You lower your hand, still staring at the man, thinking about the massive fortune they will inherit after Cheon Taesan's death. I must take all that money for myself. You look out the car window and continue thinking, to do that, I have to secretly gather money to fight against them, without letting the Cheon family find out. He turned to him and asked, tell me, what is the reason you want to meet me? What is it that you want? He turned to him and replied, please lend me some money. He looked at him with judgmental eyes and thought to himself, is it all just about the money? After everything, he's still just a pathetic guy. He asked him, how much do you need? You replied, Grandma, who has raised me for the past 17 years, needs heart surgery. I need 10 million won for that. You said, I also need you to lend me 1 million won each month until I graduate from high school, for tuition and living expenses. He answered, a total of 10 million won and 1 million each month, as you said, I can easily give you. But in his mind, a thought arose. It doesn't even have the slightest courage. Calling me here just for a few pennies? He replied, I didn't ask you to give it to me for free. I'm just borrowing it for a while. His words made him a little surprised by him. He closed his eyes and thought to himself, look at this kid, interesting. He continued to think, it's not even capable of paying the interest, let alone the principal, yet still asked to borrow money for tuition and other expenses, and can't be given it for free. He spoke with an amused tone. It's not hard for a loan shark to lend someone money, but loan sharks won't lend you money for nothing. Taesan's face darkened as he turned to you with a menacing glare, warning you, at the very least, you need the ability to repay. Do you have any collateral or credibility for that? You asked back. He asked about the collateral. Raise your hand and point to your head, responding, my brain is the collateral asset. After listening, he looked at you with a slightly surprised expression. Ha UK continued seriously, if you lend me money, I will attend Korea Law School. The more he listened to you, the more his view of you changed. Then he continued, I will use it as collateral to pay the principal and interest. You recall in the past life, this was a request he made, but this time it's mine. Cheon Taesan had a strong desire for academic achievement, but due to poverty, he didn't receive a proper education. As he grew older and his career advanced, he became even more obsessed with his children's academic success. However, his sons, Cheon So-man and Cheon Ji-gun, could barely get into universities in Seoul despite spending a lot of money. Although my mother was accepted into a prestigious university in Seoul, she eventually dropped out and left him. Returning to reality, he looked at the old man and thought, his grandson entering the Korean Law University would be an attractive proposition, something that could erase his inferiority complex about his own level of education. He looked at him and thought, he would enter Korea Law University, but from what I know, his grades aren't enough to get in. Is he bluffing? How confident are you? What if you fail the exam? After hearing this, he thought to himself, I've tried it once before, but there's no guarantee. However, right now, I need to get as much attention and favor from him as possible. He turned to answer him, if I fail, I will give up my head and this entire body. Is that enough? He looked at him in surprise, thinking to himself, abandoning his body. Then he replied, that's enough. You continued, on the contrary, if I pass, give me a gift to congratulate me. He was surprised when you said that and asked, a gift? What else do you want? You replied, I'll tell you after I get into law school. You said, I plan to ask you for a big gift at that time. His face was expressionless. The corners of his mouth suddenly changed slightly. He gave a sly smile. Then he burst into loud laughter and said, fine, I'll wait. I'm really eager to see just how big the gift you want will be. His face calmed, he turned to you and said, but if you fail. The old man's smile suddenly became smug as he said, as promised, you will belong to me, you will have to do everything I say. He continued speaking with a voice full of murderous intent, things that even demons fear. Qiu Qian firmly replied, sure, Grandpa. You are standing in the schoolyard, eyes fixed on the car driving ahead. The old man's unpleasant face waving away the dust said, trying to scare a little kid, huh? He turned to look at his shadow and thought, and as a devil, I like that idea. His eyes suddenly turned red, with a murderous aura radiating around him. His voice firm, I will become a demon if that's what you want, the one who will tear the Cheon family to pieces. At an intersection with many moving vehicles, in the car, Tae-san spoke to Eung-hun, saying he's an interesting kid. Seeing this, the director looked at him in surprise. Eung-hun replied, I was also quite surprised because he was so different from the reports. He looked out the window and said, I have met all kinds of people in this business, those who don't pay but shamelessly ask for more. He continued, those who bring gangsters to threaten me, those who scare others by claiming they'll stab themselves in the stomach, even those who sell their own children for money. He said, after dealing with such people for a long time, you'll be able to recognize what kind of person they are with just a glance. He touched his beard and continued, eyes, expressions, body language, tone of voice, you can understand a person clearly through those things. His eyes suddenly became resolute as he finished, but I know nothing about him, it feels like he's the one evaluating me. Eung-hun said, you seem to like him. Suddenly Tae-san said, Mi-san, making Eung-hun turn his head. He continued, Tae at Daehan Busan Hospital. Eung-hun looked at him with a slightly surprised expression. Tae-san's car is about to enter the tunnel on the highway. At Daehan Busan Hospital, Hayuk bowed to the doctor, pleading, please take care of my grandmother. The doctor next to him agreed and replied, don't worry too much, this isn't a difficult surgery. You stand up straight, your eyes fixed on something. That's the sign, surgery in progress. In the hospital. Suddenly a voice called out, making him turn his head. Hey Momo! Dong-soo approached you, put his arm around your shoulder, and asked with a delighted expression, Momo, are you attending school properly? Are you eating 3 meals a day? Then Taho asked, busy? If not, come up to the rooftop and have a smoke with me. His face showed some fear as he said, are you trying to drag students into trouble? I'm busy. I have to study. Dong-soo was surprised, stepped back, eyes wide and mouth agape, asking him, study? You're just a kid. Why study? You're young. You should be out having fun. Dong-soo reached into his pocket, as if looking for something, and continued, well, if you want to learn, I won't hold you back anymore. Your eyes were fixed on Dong-soo's hand, as if searching for something. Dong-soo suddenly handed him a rubber stick with a smug look and said, here, if you feel sleepy, just peel this off and chew on it. Dong-soo turned and walked away, not forgetting to wave goodbye and say, see you later. You held the rubber rod, your eyes fixed on Dong-soo as he waved goodbye. Hayuk looked at the piece of gum and thought, at this point, he was already a notorious gangster, the second in command of a gang with hundreds of members. Unexpectedly, he turned out to be quite a funny guy. But soon, when the war against crime is declared, Bok Dong-soo will. You haven't finished your thought when you suddenly saw some young men getting out of the car downstairs. The young men looked around. The one in the middle hid a knife in his shirt, while the two beside him were stretching as if preparing to fight someone. He thought to himself, those people don't even mention it. Some young men entered the hospital. He turned to look at them and thought, Bok Dong-soo, today shouldn't have been the day you died. The expression on his face suddenly turned smug, with some calculations in mind, as if thinking, I might be able to get him on my side. At the hospital reception, while 2 nurses were diligently on duty, something unfortunate happened. A rough-looking guy approached with a package in hand asking, where is the room of the person named Dong-soo? Just looking at them, it was clear these two were no good. Despite the risk, the nurse still did her job, stammering, what's your relationship with the patient? The thug slammed the package on the table and snarled, are you blind? I'm here to visit him. Surprisingly, Hayuk burst out rudely when he heard them mention the name of the bully Dong-soo. He bowed his head timidly. Are you looking for Dong-soo? I am Dong-soo's younger brother. I'll take everyone to his room, he said, gesturing toward the partially open door ahead. Sang-gi and his group were a bit hesitant, or rather extremely confused by the current situation. On the other hand, in Hayuk's eyes, he suddenly thought, how dare these thugs make noise in the hospital while his grandmother is undergoing surgery, they must be taken outside first. Based on the plan, Hayuk successfully lured Sang-gi's group out of the hospital grounds and into a deserted alley. Sang-gi started to feel something was off and shouted, hey kid, what's this? Where are you taking us? The distance was far enough for a direct inquiry, Hayuk asked bluntly. Are you guys here to kill Dong-soo? Indeed. Hit right on the mark, he didn't hide it, but directly pulled out a long dagger from his pocket. Bastard, who are you? In response to his snide attitude, Hayuk shyly stretched, making them a bit uneasy. Who is this kid? When he was about to strike, Dong-soo's voice suddenly rang out, Hey, what are you guys doing here? Dongsu questioned. Aren't you gangsters ashamed pulling a knife on a high school kid? Seeing the person he wanted to silence, he rushed straight toward them. This guy used his punch to deal with Dongsu completely. Very quickly, he punched his opponent's head. However, what Hayuk and the others didn't expect happened. Dongsu braced himself, blocking the punch with just his forehead. The hunter becomes the prey, his hand swelling red from the hard head of Dongsu. Even as the patient, Dongsu quickly countered the thug. With a slight shift of his foot, Dongsu threw him off balance. He staggered in midair, then tumbled backward. Dongsu aimed precisely at his head and delivered a punch in return. The force was beyond human strength, and Sangye's accomplice's head hit the ground in an instant. Before the astonished eyes of the thugs, Dongsu stripped off the hospital gown, revealing his toned muscles and the many tattoos covering his skin. Sangye charged forward recklessly, brandishing the dagger from earlier as a challenge. Of course, Dongsu just saw this as a cat-and-mouse game, weaving to his opponent's right side before delivering an uppercut to his chin. Sangye collapsed, his body no longer reacting fiercely as before. The other two retreated one by one after witnessing Dongsu take down each of them with a single blow. Dongsu grabbed Sangye by the hair like a trophy and lifted him up. A throw aimed straight at the nearby chubby guy. The next move that made his legendary reputation, Dongsu loosened one of his sandals. He gathered momentum and kicked forward with force. The slipper flew straight into the fat man's face. The damage wasn't much, but the humiliation was beyond acceptable limits, leaving a mark on his thick lips as the slipper fell. Dongsu makes a new move, leaping into the air and charging toward the fat guy. Then came a direct kick to the middle of Sungye's stomach. Both of them immediately fell down, leaving only the bald-headed guy. It seems he no longer dares to keep the arrogant attitude he had earlier. He squinted his eyes and looked towards Dongsu. Then he turned his attention to the two glass doors next to him. A thought flashed in his mind. The bald guy grabbed a glass door and used it as a weapon to confront Dongsu. Thanks to his superior speed, Dongsu successfully closed in without the guy noticing, quickly punching through the glass and delivering a knockout blow to the bald man's face. The weak body was blown away dozens of meters. As of now, Dongsu has taken down all four thugs who dared to challenge him. Suddenly he remembered the presence of Hayuk. An and Hayuk then returned to the hospital room, feeling refreshed. It had been a while since they could stretch their muscles, and it felt great. Recently, I fought those guys when the two sides were battling over territory. I know for sure they will come there to settle the score while I'm in the hospital. I've had my eye on them, but then you brought them here. You're pretty brave, kid. They play with knives, and you aren't scared at all. Hayuke calmly replied, It's because I knew you would come, and I also knew your men were guarding the hospital. Even without my intervention, the outcome would still be the same. Even before, Dongsu could easily overpower them. Seeing Hayuk so confident, Dongsu was a bit surprised. He put his arm around Hayuk's neck and said, Say what you want, you still owe me. Do you think I'll just let it go? Tell me your wish, I'll grant you anything. Do you want money or women? For this tempting offer, Hayuk didn't waver for a second. He looked at the man laying out conditions and thought, Dongsu, you will be the first tool in my plan. I must make you mine. Hayuk made a request to him, so Dongsu, take your closest subordinate with you and hide somewhere for 3 months. Dongsu was momentarily stunned. What the heck? I'm asking you what you want, and you're spouting nonsense. Why would I need to hide? He explained that the president will soon declare a war on crime and issue a nationwide arrest warrant for all criminal organizations. Dongsu was once again puzzled. He mumbled, a war against crime? Briefly speaking about the so-called fight against crime, in October 1990, the president issued a special document to prevent public criticism and change the political situation due to various corrupt acts of the regime. While there has been a major crackdown on crime over the past year, the president's announcement on the war against crime next month will be on a completely different level. A large-scale operation aimed at destroying criminal organizations and other smaller groups associated with them. Hayuk instructed to keep the location secret, not to let anyone know, even the members of the same organization. Be especially careful with your boss, Seong. That was my wish. Hayuk walked away immediately, leaving Dongsu in terrifying astonishment. From now on, making decisions is up to him. If he survives, one day he will be useful to me. After a long, drawn-out period, it's now been a month at Mount Chisan. A patched-up 3-room house was built here. Inside came the voice of the host. A fight against crime and violence to eliminate criminal organizations was declared, and the Constitution granted full authority to the president to abolish them on October 13, 1990. The close associates of Dongsu were all shocked by the news they just heard. What's going on here? One guy was scanning the newspaper for details about the incident and relayed that all prosecutors and police officers have been mobilized, and every organization in Busan has been arrested. Even Seong was surprised to see Dongsu here. Following Hayuk's words from a month ago, he had built a shelter inside the mountain. Dongsu ordered his underlings, Don't do anything and stay here. Don't wander around causing unnecessary trouble, got it? Yes, boss. Dongsu grabbed the newspaper and read about the news causing chaos all over Busan. What's going on? Everything matches what that kid said. Recalling that moment, Dong-soo reacted fiercely after hearing Hyuk's baseless words. He yelled in the hospital, "What are you talking about? Why don't you wish for national reunification while you're at it?" Hyuk looked at Dong-soo and softly replied, "That wish will come true in Germany, not us." When piecing everything together, Dong-soo carefully read each word about the events of October 3rd, under the unified title of Germany Unites After More Than 45 Years of Division. Dong-soo was shocked. "Hyuk, who is he?" At the Namchan apartment, Grandpa is quick to handle everything. Hyuk and his grandmother were in the empty room. "Hyuk, don't say anything," Grandma said. "I received support from the grandfather who came to see me after 17 years. He also gave me living expenses, so you don't need to work anymore." The elderly woman, her face lined with wrinkles, began to worry, unsure if it was okay to accept these things. Hyuk reassured her, "It's been hard enough for you to raise your grandchild alone. You deserve this. Just wait a little longer, and I promise you'll have a comfortable life. Just focus on taking care of your health, okay?" The grandmother could not help but feel emotional at his words. Surprisingly, there were two more guests in the room. Eung-soo and Hun-sung walked in with gifts in hand. "Grandma, congratulations on your discharge from the hospital. We brought some pork belly for you on the way." He shouted joyfully, "Let's grill some meat and enjoy today's feast." This at least made the grandmother feel happy, and Hyuk also felt much more relieved. The three of them, along with their grandmother, set up a small feast and gathered together. After a hearty meal, the three of them returned to their daily lives at the school where Hyuk is studying. All three were wearing school uniforms, strolling around the campus. Eung-soo looked bored and said, "The weather is nice and cool, but honestly, getting our test scores today really ruined my mood." Hun-sung just laughed in a way that made no sense. Civil war broke out immediately, and the two rushed into a verbal duel. "Hey, don't laugh, you're no different from me." "What did you say?" "I'm better than you. At least I'm ranked 500 out of 520 people." "Move aside, I'm ranked 451, don't show off in front of me." Hun-sung approached Hyuk, checking in. "How's it going? You've been studying so hard," he replied. "I've only made a little progress, I need to try harder. It's been a long time since I returned to studying, so it's been a bit challenging, but I did pretty well." Not long after, they arrived at their class. As soon as he stepped in, a friend rushed over and said breathlessly, "Hey Hyuk, did you hear the news? You ranked first in this exam." He stood frozen for a few seconds. "Really? I just heard about it in the teacher's office this morning." Another boy burst through the door, seeming even more anxious than the one before. Hyuk, the homeroom teacher, called him to the office. Eung-soo marveled, "What's this? You must have gotten a reward or something, hurry up." According to the announcement, Hyuk was standing in front of the teacher's office. Teacher Bak was the one who called him over. In front of Hyuk, Teacher Bak said, "Hyuk, do you know why I called you here?" Of course, he had no idea why, so he just stood there waiting for an answer. Unexpectedly, Teacher Bak suddenly stood up and slapped Hyuk straight across the face. The friends who followed him witnessed everything through the window, their eyes wide and mouths agape in astonishment. Bak repeated, "Let me ask you again. Do you know why I called you here?" This time he spoke up. "No, I don't know." Another slap landed in the exact same spot as before. Teacher Bak questioned, "What did you do with the exam? Did you cheat, right? In your first year, you were the shortest in school, but in your second year, you became the best. He did that because of what happened a few days ago, when you and Teacher Bak were in a private room together. He said he heard that the person sitting in that imported car was your grandfather. He should have come to greet me first since I'm your homeroom teacher, right? The violent bastard, he's extremely dedicated to being a piece of trash, even more than I remember." Hyuk sprang up and replied, "My uncle lives in Seoul. If you want to meet him, you have to go to Seoul." Teacher Bak insisted, "He will visit you again, right? When the time comes, tell him about me." Hyuk bowed to the teacher and asked to leave. "If we're done, I'll go ahead. The exams are in a few days." Without another word, he walked away abruptly in response to the man's angry attitude. Back to reality, Mr. Bak took out a baseball bat and placed it on Hyuk's shoulder. "You're cheating, aren't you? Did you do it yourself or did someone collude with you?" Hyuk frowned. "No, I didn't cheat." Teacher Bak believes this unruly student is denying the accusations against him. He rolls up his sleeves. "Look at you. I let you off the hook when you caused trouble. And now you dare to cheat on the test? Is this how your grandmother raised you?" To maintain a respectful attitude even though it wasn't necessary, he just stayed silent and cursed inwardly. This jerk had crossed the line. So annoying. He saw you standing still like a statue and picked a fight. His hand was ready to punch you again. "What are you staring at? I'll gouge your eyes out." Hyuk countered, "Apologize. Whether I'm studious or cheating, what does it have to do with my grandmother? Apologize right now." "Are you crazy?" Bak continued slapping him in the face. Then he tore up Hyuk's entire exam. "No need to check anything else. I'll mark all your exams for cheating. Got it? Starting today, you're suspended indefinitely. Honestly, I wanted to expel you right away, but..." Hyuk made an offer, or rather a bet, with Teacher Bak. In front of him, you said, "This exam question, I'll solve it right here in front of you just like I did in the exam room." Other teachers in the room gradually paid attention to his words. Hyuk continued, "If you don't reach the same score, I will drop out of school. But if you achieve the same score, the teacher will have to quit the school." Your words caused a stir in the entire office. Bak didn't dare to face the challenge, so he swung the baseball bat in his hand towards Hyuk, the arrogant brat. However, this time, Hyuk didn't back down like before. He caught the baseball bat with one hand and threw out a challenge. "What's wrong? Not confident?" After that, he tightened the stick and shouted, "Bring the exam papers here." At the same time, more and more students are gathering in front of the teacher's office, mostly out of curiosity after Hyuk's earlier remark. Inside the office, Hyuk was redoing the exam as he had promised earlier, with 3 other teachers monitoring the process nearby. In just a few minutes, he submitted many different test versions to Teacher Bak, who scratched his head while grading due to the astonishing scores. Even in math, literature, or Korean history, she scored a perfect 100, and even in physics and social sciences, she was just as outstanding. Teacher Gakthi Hyuk approached Mr. Bak and softly said, "Mr. Bak, if he takes the English exam, he will score perfectly in all subjects." Anxiety piled up as Hyuk informed Teacher Bak that he had reached the final question, and if he answered correctly, Teacher Bak would have to leave the school forever. Hyuk warned, "If you don't keep your promise and keep coming to school, don't expect me to treat you like a teacher." His face turned pale and he broke out in a cold sweat. Under the gaze of students outside, Hyuk offered a condition that could salvage the situation. "If you apologize now, I will stop working on the assignment." Knowing the outcome in advance but still stubborn out of pride, Teacher Bak gritted his teeth, glaring in Hyuk's direction. This prompted another supervisor to jump up and intervene. "Enough, stop it, Mr. Bak, stop it, Hyuk, you've already proven you're not cheating, so just stop." Then, the supervisor patted Bak on the shoulder, asking him to back down. "You should apologize too. You ought to praise that improvement instead." The remaining teachers in the room were gathered in small groups chatting away. Suddenly Bak stood up and slightly opened his lips to apologize in front of Hyuk. "I misunderstood you." Receiving the desired result, Hyuk slammed the pen down on the table roughly. "So I'm heading back to class." He confidently walked out of the teacher's office, under the admiring eyes of his fellow students. The happiest people were probably Eung-soo and Hun-sung, his 2 friends who jumped up in celebration for him. A group of students is crowding around the school's honor board, with many lists from various categories. However, what's truly noteworthy is the list of top students, with the name Hyuk prominently taking the first place in the entire school. On the other hand, he and his 2 friends left afterward. Eung-soo mentioned what happened earlier between Hyuk and Teacher Bak. "Did you see his constipated face just now? He looked like he had no blood left in him." He turned to him. "You're really the top student of the school now," Hun-sung continued. "Is it true that you're going to Korea University?" Suddenly Hyuk paused for a few seconds. He looked at the backs of his 2 friends and warned, "Eung-soo, you should start studying seriously. I'll help you. Hun-sung, you too, start practicing judo again and get into college as a specially admitted student." During middle school, Eung-soo had fairly high grades. He could have pursued a liberal arts education, but chose to attend a vocational high school to follow his passion. In middle school, Hun-sung was also a promising judo athlete, but he chose to come here even though this school doesn't have any sports teams because he didn't want to be separated from us. Eung-soo rejected his sincerity, saying that studying at this hour is pointless. "I'll probably take over my father's night business." Hun-sung, on the other hand, said his body has become too stiff and that he's planning to work at a factory somewhere. Hyuk put his arm around both of them and talked about his upcoming plans. "In the near future, I need to do some important things in Seoul. But doing it alone is tough, so I really hope you guys can help me. Let's strive together and head to Seoul, comrades. Knowing that I can't take revenge on my own in the future, no matter the cost, I need allies, people who will never betray me, allies I can trust to stand by my side. I can trust my friend." The next morning, Hyuk continued to pursue his studies. "I keep focusing on my studies, and easily secured first place in the final exam of the second year. Eung-soo's score isn't the highest, but he's started to make progress." Hun-sung started training again, and everything gradually fell into place. Winter has arrived in the blink of an eye. In front of a skyscraper, Hyuk arrived at the company entrance. "Once again I'm back." The invincible fortress of the Cheon clan, Changdong, Nogu, along with Namdong, is one of the wealthiest areas in the country, where the fortress of Taesan reigns. At this time, he was ranked first in the ability to mobilize cash, both in the Third Republic, which came to power through a coup, in the Fifth Republic, which continued with another coup, and even in the current regime, this impregnable fortress of the king of usury. Protect his legacy from those forces. Hyuk and old man Taesan had a rather lonely dinner together. He just focused on dinner, paying no attention to the boy in front of him. This scenario never happened in a previous life because I met Taesan much later, after I was admitted to Korea Law University. His assessment of me has changed. Under the warm lights, both he and the old man moved to the living room, getting ready for a private conversation. Taesan sipped his tea and said, "I heard you ranked first for 2 consecutive semesters." The level of our school isn't exceptional, but perhaps the words from before weren't just boasting. He pointed to his head and metaphorically said, your brain. Hyuk smiled slightly when he saw the man's action. Because you kept your promise, I want to give you a gift. Do you want anything? Hyuk sternly responded, as I said before, I'll let you know what I want when I get into college. Taeson nodded, as promised. If you pass the Korean Law University, I will grant you anything you want, but tell me what you want right now. He thought to himself, he's trying to act like a normal grandfather, right? So I should ask for an allowance. Hyuk asked Taeson for some company shares. He was a bit surprised by the suggestion. Company stocks? Do you know anything about the stock market? I don't know much about it, that's why I'm asking you, Grandpa. If I buy now, which company's stock would be the best choice? If I ask about stocks instead of money, you'll see it as a sweet request from your grandchild, right? Suddenly Taeson smirked. He called Director Ha over and asked about his shares in Dahoon Corporation, which amounted to 4%. Taeson asked Director Ha to give everything to Hyuk, saying it was a gift for my nephew. Remember to pay taxes on time to avoid any. The name Dahoon surprised Hyuk a bit. At that time, Dahoon was the undisputed leading conglomerate, ranking first among all the chaebol. However, after the founder's death, it was split due to conflicts among the heirs. Dahoon's shares were not just about money. After bowing in gratitude to Taeson, Hyuk continued to ponder it. Even with a lot of money, it's still very difficult to acquire shares of Dahoon. I honestly thought he would give me a little allowance, but luckily it turned into a big gift. What surprised him even more was the arrival of those who came later. Dad, we're here now. Hyuk looked over with a curious gaze, then jolted in surprise. They are the So-man and So-han families. So-man saw Hyuk and wondered, are you the son of Mi-suk? He politely stood up to greet them, but inside, he began to feel tense. Aren't these the people he's been searching for? Memories of his past life filled him with rage. Those people. Order my execution? Taeson told him, ask away, they're your uncles. In Hyuk's view, they are the most likely suspects given the circumstances, but it's still uncertain, so I have to stay under their radar. He bowed his head, greeted the uncles. I'm Hyuk, So-man said. That's right, I heard you grew up without Mi-suk, raised only by your grandmother. It's great to see you again as family. He patted him on the shoulder a few times and hinted, if you need anything, just let me know. After all, we're family. The most powerful members of Taeson accompanied him to his office. Taeson said, how is your mother-in-law's business going? I heard that the Samsung Group is currently going through a difficult phase. She responded, no, everything is fine. The media always exaggerates and makes things up. You know what my father-in-law is like. I know very well, he is a ruthless man who never sheds a tear. Let them know they can rely on us if they need our help. We can't leave our in-laws behind. Thanks, Dad. I'll pass on the message to them. After that, Taeson turned to So-han, and what about Mr. Kim? My father-in-law is still doing well and actively participating in politics, no issues at all. Taeson told him to just ask his father for money if needed, no need to get into trouble over a few illegal pennies. Finally, Taeson asked a general question to his 3 children. By the way, has anyone recently sent money to Chairman Hokuso? He frowned and spoke in a condescending tone. That's not how you should spend your money. Make them come and beg in front of you. Never give money before they beg. So-man interrupted. But Dad, don't you already know who is behind Chairman Hokuso? If we break the promise. So-han also chimed in. That's right, Dad, if you do that. Onbung won't let this slide. The terrifying aura radiated from the entire body of the old man Taeson. At the same time, rain began to pour outside as a warning. At the Cheon family's villa, amid a heavy rainstorm, transitioned to a neat, sophisticated room. Hyuk slowly looked around the place where his mother used to stay. He suddenly had thoughts just like in his past life. Suddenly he gently picked a random book from the shelf, then calmly opened it to see how it was. However, there was a very familiar picture to him. The photo is of his mother taken next to her father, Mr. Taeson. Hyuk looked at his mother's figure in silence. This was the only photo of his mother he found from his previous life. He didn't leave any other photo besides this one. It's like he wants the whole world to forget his mother ever existed. At this moment someone suddenly pushed the door open, catching the curiosity of Hyuk. Ji-kwon sneered, hey, aren't you Mi-suk's son? The sight of him instantly filled you with hatred. Oh right, Ji-kwon, that bastard. It might be the one who ordered my death. In its eyes I must be the thorn that needs to be removed, because I am the heir it's targeting. He slowly walked over and said, you were in Busan before coming here, right? How do you find it moving from your hometown to Seoul? Must be hard to adjust, huh? The response to him was an irritating question from Hyuk. Who are you? Chi-gun just scoffed. What's this? Why are you so rude? You know I'm older than you. People from Busan don't know manners. His attitude still left him stunned for a moment, childish whether in the past or now, it remains the same. What bad luck. So he quickly put the novel back on the shelf, slowly walked over to Chi-gun's place. Hyuk angrily replied, so what if you're older, this is the first time we've met and you're already talking like that, then demanding my respect. He seems to have been caught off guard by this situation, unable to foresee it. He thought to himself, it probably didn't expect this reaction. Maybe this is the first time someone has treated it with such hostility. Its father is the eldest son of the loan shark kingpin in Myeongdong, and its mother is the eldest daughter of the chairman of the Samsung Group, one of the leading conglomerates. Who would dare to disrespect it, this bastard Chi-gun? Suddenly, a few minutes later, he loudly criticized, how dare a kid like you talk back to me? But a few seconds later, he changed his expression. Well, I don't know why you're here, but this isn't a place for someone like you. How much do you want to get out of here? 100 million enough. With 100 million in Busan you can live like a king. Before his scornful words, Hyuk thought to himself, he said exactly the same thing before, and I couldn't say anything, just stood there like a fool. And then he finally spoke up, you really are generous, planning to give me some pocket money? His words left him quite puzzled. What? Hyuk's face lit up with excitement. 100 million is just pocket change, isn't it? At Gotchi Fish Market it would only be enough for a plate of fresh fish. Chi-gun at this moment thought, you really are an orphan. You said she raised you, right? Looking at you it's clear how that old woman turned out. However, right after that sentence, a punch immediately flew toward him. The punch of Hyuk was so powerful that the door behind it cracked. He gruffly said, yeah, she raised me. You want to get beaten up by this country bumpkin with no parents and no manners? Witnessing his authority, he began to tremble in fear. Do you think doing this to the eldest son of the Cheon family will let you get away? I'll tell on you right away, but Hyuk just reminded you, idiot, snap out of it. Currently, Cheon Chi-gun, the spoiled grandson of the Samsung Group, is so addicted to drugs that he might even be involved in smuggling, possibly making headlines. He was getting more and more scared. What are you saying? He sneered and said, got it? Want me to tell you more about those rich kids throwing drug parties at hotels and sending a girl to the hospital? Faced with that truth, he had no way to deny it. How do you know about that? Hyuk didn't stop there and even threatened, but the important thing is you're just a kid. I'm confident I can go down and tell him everything right now. Want to come along? Deep down, he secretly believed that he knew all the accidents it caused in its past life, and that the accidents that had happened were nothing compared to what would happen in the future. Before leaving, Hyuk patted his shoulder to reassure him, hey man, if you want to be treated like a man, then act like one. Seeing his attitude, Chi-gun turned pale with shock. Suddenly Hyuk walked over and sat down on the chair. I need your help now. I'm a bit tired today. He said in confusion, never mention this again, or one of us will die there, got it? Suddenly Hyuk's expression changed. Was that a suggestion or a threat? He stared blankly, considering it a proposal. In this moment he hurriedly chased him out. Fine, I'll keep my mouth shut, now get out quickly. So Chi-kwan had to leave immediately in frustration. But the attitude remained unchanged, extremely arrogant. At that moment, Hyuk secretly wondered if Cheon Chi-gun was the one who killed him, if he had been taken down by someone like that. Scene shifts to the outside of the mansion. A moment later, Hyuk calmly walked down to the lobby. Taesun saw that and asked, are you heading back? He quickly bowed his head and said, yes sir, I ask for your permission. As usual he calmly left, yeah go ahead. Before leaving, he didn't forget to promise that his nephew would visit his grandfather regularly. Taesun now leisurely looks out at the balcony, in an unparalleled elite space. Switching scenes to a nearby city. After taking Hyuk back, Director Ha handed him a card. Here, 100 million, take it. This is a gift from the chairman. He thinks just Dahun shares alone aren't enough. The password is the anniversary of the young lady's death, not the anniversary of Hyuk's mother's death. This situation left him quite surprised. Cheon Taesun is always so meticulous in everything, please send him my thanks. But he advised you call him directly, he's definitely waiting. This made Hyuk very anxious. Min is now in 11th grade, we're in different classes, but Eungso is still diligent in studying, and Hun Sung is fully committed to the judo club. Everyone is doing their best in their own way to keep the promise of going to university together in Seoul. Then that guy showed up. At that time, a new student transferred in. The homeroom teacher just announced to the class that he's a transfer student. Since he's from Seoul, everyone should take note and say hello. He gradually broke into a sly smile. Hello, my name is Hong Bio from Seoul, nice to meet you all. The next day at a restaurant near the school, there was a group of students who looked like real thugs eating. Bio sat calmly smoking with a very arrogant attitude. Who's the boss around here? Upon hearing that, two students responded, hey, we don't have anyone like that, but there's someone somewhat similar named Kim Hyuk. He curiously asked, what grade, and was told, 11th grade, it's the strongest one. Last year at the beginning of the school year, the upperclassmen called out all those with potential, but, hey Kim Hyuk, didn't you hear me telling you to get out? Why are you still lying here sleeping? In that situation, someone rashly hit Hyuk on the head. Get up, you bastard. Disturbed from his sleep, he abruptly got up, grumpy. However, at that moment he still seemed half asleep, and a few seconds later, he glanced back at them. His gaze held such power that it made them wary. Just after that, he was knocked into the trash can by him. All of them were dealt with swiftly in a heartbeat. After it's done, Hyuk calmly returned to his seat and went back to sleep as if nothing had happened. I'm going back to sleep, don't wake me up. After that incident, even the seniors didn't dare mess with him anymore. But now he just focuses on studying. Hearing this news, Bio was very surprised. So, he's living peacefully, concentrating on his studies, even though he's the strongest one. Isn't he just an arrogant guy? Playing with these types is what makes it fun. Although they hesitated, saying, "Are you planning to fight him? Don't mess with him, he's really on a different level." He still arrogantly said, "Being good at fighting doesn't mean you always win. You guys follow me because you lost to me, right? You're all here because my dad's a prosecutor, and what does his dad do?" They immediately said it had no parents, only lived with its grandmother, had a grandfather, but no one knew anything about him. Bio was stunned and asked, "So this guy doesn't have parents?" On the other hand, in a corner of the school, Ungso said, "It seems Hun-sung has gone to the sports club again," he replied. "Yeah, he's been on a break for quite a while. It was determined to go to the sports university, even following a strict diet." "You were really surprised by Hun-sung's persistence. Our little Hun-sung has finally started to grow up." "Oh right, have you heard about that guy Hong Bio who moved from Seoul? He looks like one of those handsome guys and speaks with a Seoul accent that's super annoying." Hearing him mention that name left him quite dazed. "I remember now, the prosecutor's son who transferred from Seoul. I didn't pay much attention because I was busy studying, but he used his father's influence to run the school as he pleased." Suddenly Ungso told him something. The guys from the upper class didn't even come to school because they went on a trip. But that Bio guy formed a group and made all the 10th graders act like thugs. This school has become his playground now. Right at that moment, they happened to pass by the spot where the two were standing. The arrogance of their attitude is overwhelming. The look in Bio's eyes clearly showed his arrogant fearlessness. This situation inevitably made Hyuk feel uneasy, so he reminded Ungso not to get involved with that guy. He wondered and asked, "Why should I get involved with him? Why are you so worried?" However, he kept insisting, "But seriously, don't get involved with it, I'm serious." Finally, he was convinced by his persistence. "Okay, you're too worried. Does it know your weakness or something? Why are you so worried?" Seeing their figures gradually fade away, Hyuk is showing a lot of concern. He suddenly remembered his past life while studying. Hun-sung hurriedly came to report, something happened to Hyuk. Ungso got into an accident, yet he remained indifferent. What kind of accident? He immediately informed that he got into a fight, got seriously injured in his leg, and now he's crippled. All because of the transfer student Hong Bio, but since his father is a prosecutor, he didn't even get questioned. How could it be? Hearing this news, Hyuk was furious. Even though he was very angry, it seemed like he couldn't do anything more. Does it have anything to do with me? Go away, I have to study. Back then, I didn't want to get involved in any trouble, so I even ignored my best friend, Ungso. However, this time I won't abandon anyone precious to me, no matter who they are. Transition to Ungso's classroom. While he was diligently focusing on his studies, a group of people suddenly approached and called him. It turns out it was the group of people Bio. He asked, "You're close with that guy named Hyuk, right? I heard Kim Hyuk is really good at fighting, is that true?" Even though he tried to explain, "Don't worry, now he's only focused on studying, it has nothing to do with you," he said in surprise. "Really, so it doesn't have a problem with me running this school, right?" Ungso affirmed, "Do whatever you want, even if you devour the entire school, Hyuk has nothing to do with it." Suddenly he laughed sinisterly and said, "Too bad that Hyuk kid annoyed me too much." This made Ungso extremely annoyed. "Why do you keep bothering Hyuk when he hasn't done anything to you?" Suddenly Bio smirked. "Actually, your dad just doesn't like it when people think there's someone better than me. And these guys seem to be more afraid of Hyuk than me, right?" Even so, he stubbornly insisted on asking for them, "Just let it go." One of them raised his hand, ready to teach you a lesson. "You idiot, do you know who you're talking to? Without Hyuk, you're nothing, just cowering in a corner, yet you dare speak like that?" Right at that moment Bio stopped him. Then I spoke up, "What's mine is mine, I always get what I want. Always crush what I want to crush." The arrogant attitude of him made Ungso very displeased. "You bastard, are you stupid?" As soon as he finished speaking, someone slammed his head onto the table. At the same time, Bio approached and questioned, "Just because you're close to Hyuk, so don't take it seriously." Then he ordered his men, "Bring him out here." Hyuk is sitting quietly, focused on reading and doing homework. Suddenly a guy came running like a rocket, urgently saying, "Hyuk, something happened." Hyuk asked in confusion, "What?" The friend, panting, urgently informed Hyuk that Ungso was taken away by Bio. "He told you to go to the music room in the annex building." Hearing that, Hyuk quickly dashed out of the classroom. He ran, gritting his teeth in anger, knowing this would happen. On the way, Hyuk ran into Hun Seong, who seemed to have overheard the story somewhere. He ran after Hyuk, asking, "What does it mean? Was Ungso taken by Bio?" Hung Sung was boiling with anger, unable to control himself. Hyuk saw him like that and said, "Hun Sung, I'll handle it, you just stay there." Hun Sung couldn't swallow his rage and shouted, "What are you saying? How can I stand still when Ungso is being taken away?" Hyuk thought carefully. After a year of hard training, Hun Sung had emerged as a promising judo talent in Busan. However, if he got involved in the school violence incident, He might have to give up his dream. Hyuk tried to convince Hunsung, calm down, you're an athlete. If you get involved in these things, it will negatively affect your college admissions. Hunsung still couldn't calm down, too worried about Eungso. He shouted wildly, enough, stop talking nonsense, now we're supposed to worry about college. If anything happens to Eungso, I'll definitely take care of that bio guy. Hyuk kept persuading him, but he still wouldn't snap out of it, so Hyuk shouted his full name, Bak Hunsung. And once again, Hyuk emphasized to Hunsung to get it straight, I told you already, didn't I? I have things to do in the future, I really need you and Eungso to help, so let me handle this. Hunsung was very surprised to hear what Hyuk just said. Then Hyuk used his foot to completely destroy the mop to make a weapon. Hunsung was seriously instructed not to let anyone in, whether it be a teacher or anyone else, just focus on that. Hunsung, with a tense expression, asked Hyuk, are you really planning to make another jar? Hyuk patted his friend's shoulder and glanced at him, saying, you forgot who I am? I am Kim Hyuk. You walked in with a very polished, cheerful appearance. As soon as he stepped inside, Hyuk was stunned and overwhelmed to witness a group of very thug-like students bullying Eungso, while Eungso was kneeling painfully on the ground. Bio said to his henchmen with extreme cruelty and malice, so they weren't joking, they said if I mess with Eungso, Hyuk would definitely show up, and here he is. He also threatened Hyuk, saying if you didn't come, I would have already broken Eungso's ankle. You're lucky, Eungso. At this moment, Eungso's entire body was covered in wounds, and he felt helpless because he couldn't protect himself. Eungso tried to suppress the pain, lifted his head and asked Hyuk, what are you doing here? Hyuk gritted his teeth and shouted straight at Bio, if you have something to say to me, you should come to me, not bother my friends. Bio was a very bold and cruel man. When he heard Hyuk say that, he just laughed out loud. Then she put on an innocent face and casually said, oh really, why did I do that? Oh right, now I remember. Because I like it, so what? Hearing the word like coming out of his foul mouth, Hyuk just wanted to rush in and teach him a lesson he'd never forget, but he still clenched his fists, holding back. After that, he thought he couldn't forgive this kind of person. He gripped the stick tightly and told him, let Eungso go and play with me. I'll make you feel pleasure like never before. All the way to the top, soaring high. Bio listened and kept his fake, shameless expression as if nothing had happened. He said, you want me to let Eungso go and then play with you? Are you filming a movie about friendship with those guys? From Busan or something? After that, he waved his hand, calling his gang to charge forward. But Bio's underlings were terrified, sweating profusely. None of them dared to step up and fight Hyuk. Bio went crazy and screamed, hey, what are you doing? I already told you who my dad is. My dad is a prosecutor. If that guy dares to lay a finger on you, I will make sure he spends his whole life in prison. Don't worry about the consequences. Hit it for me, charge in strong. A fat, bald-headed guy with a face as big as a pig charged from behind with a long stick to hit Hyuk. But no, Hyuk jabbed the mop handle straight into his neck. He clutched his throat in agony, coughing violently. Then two more men, not knowing their limits, charged forward. Hyuk just glanced at them. Using a mop, he blocked the attack from a baseball bat. Then she swiftly flung him 10 meters away. The other guy just needed one kick from Hyuk to break his neck and collapse on the ground. However, there was a bold guy who dared to ambush Hyuk. After identifying the name, Hyuk immediately struck him in the face. 3 to 4 men charged forward but were swiftly taken down by Hyuk, beaten to a pulp. The others hesitated, trembling with fear. Hyuk shouted, charge ahead, let me see you try. They charged forward without knowing their own limits. Bio stood speechless, stunned by the sight before him. Hyuk single-handedly defeated all of Bio's underlings, leaving them lying on the ground in pain. Hyuk had a few scratches on his face, and he turned back to glare at Bio with eyes full of hatred. Bio resorted to a despicable tactic, taking Eungso as a hostage. He held a knife to Eungso's throat and threatened, don't come any closer, or this guy will get stabbed right away. But Hyuk couldn't tolerate that bastard Bio any longer. He rushed forward at lightning speed. Punch him in the face. Bio was thrown off, crashing into a pile of tables and chairs. He was in tears, snot running down his face, furious at Hyuk but couldn't do anything, just glaring and growling a few times. He was terrified as Hyuk stood in front of him. Bio could only scream, you bastard, I won't let you off, my father is a prosecutor, he's a powerful man. Don't you get it yet? Prosecutor means he's going to try to put you in jail for life. Hyuk grabbed his collar, raised his fist, and told him straight up, prosecutor or not, even if the entire prosecution office. After saying that, Hyuk punched him right away, angrily warning him that this punch was for hitting my friend, Wung Seo. The second hit is because you called me out while I was studying. Hyuk landed 2 solid punches on Bio's cheeks, then lifted his leg, and said this next one is for you breaking Eungso's ankle. Bio was terrified, trembling and stuttering, unable to speak clearly. He begged Hyuk not to break his leg. But with what Bio did, he doesn't deserve forgiveness, so Hyuk didn't say much and directly twisted his ankle. Bio screamed in pain. After the scene where Hyuk finishes teaching Bio, he was locked in a prison cell. Hunsung's father was also worried and rushed to check on Hyuk. Hyuk was very surprised to see him. Hunsung's father said, Hyuk, Hunsung told me you came here to save Eungso. Hyuk worriedly asked him, Is Eungso okay? He replied, He's fine. The kid wasn't seriously injured. It turns out Hunsung's father is a police officer, so sometimes he covers up the troubles they get into. Hunsung's father held his head, concerned, and told Hyuk that they were in big trouble. You messed with the wrong person. He's the son of a well-known deputy prosecutor. Even as a police officer, there's not much I can do in this case. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Hyuk felt very sad upon hearing that, blaming himself for not controlling his anger and getting into a fight with him, and also feeling deeply resentful of this unfair society. Then Hyuk bravely said to Hunsung's father, Sir, can I ask you for a favor? He immediately replied, Go ahead. Hyuk just wanted to ask him to make a phone call, Hyuk pleaded. Just a little time, please. Night scene transition still at the police station. Hyuk sat sadly in the cell. Suddenly someone burst in shouting, Where is he? The police officer on duty was startled to see him. He stood in front of Hyuk's cell and shouted, Was it you? Are you the one who crippled my son? Hyuk looked straight at him and replied, It happened during the fight, but I was alone, while Bio had more than 10 people, so why was only I arrested? He is Bio's father, and the two of them are exactly alike. He is also a man with a wicked heart. When he heard Hyuk say that, he just laughed loudly and mocked, Listen to him talk. Then he called Chief Kim over and boldly said, Take this kid to the interrogation room. Chief Kim, shocked, replied, Prosecutor, he's still a minor. Bio's father still used his power to give orders. I said, Take him away, I'll handle everything. Then he sneered, glanced at Hyuk and said maliciously, I know exactly how to handle thugs like him. And then Hyuk was brought into the interrogation room, where Bio's father was the one questioning him. He said, So Kim Hyuk, I heard you used to be quite famous. The homeroom teacher reported what you did last year. They said you were nothing short of a thug, involved in all forms of violence, extortion, and theft both in and out of school. Seeing what you did to my son, I can tell you're not just an ordinary delinquent. The words the homeroom teacher told him made Hyuk hate this teacher even more. He silently cursed him, Animal abuser, damn old man. He firmly replied, I only defended myself, otherwise I would have been seriously injured. He heard that and went ballistic, shouting, You say it's self-defense? I'll ask again, and you'd better answer correctly. Why did you do that? Hyuk told him everything. I heard my friend was taken by someone, so I came to check. Then Bu and his gang attacked me. If I had no choice but to fight back, did I do anything wrong? The prosecutor, upon hearing that, said, No way, and slowly took off his belt. The defiant face said, I need to teach you a lesson. He told his two subordinates to capture Hyuk, and they were both confused, unsure of what he intended to do. Then he threw a straight punch at Hyuk's face. Just try and say it again while hitting. Why did you do that? He beat Hyuk so severely that Hyuk started coughing up blood. When he stopped, Hyuk firmly stated it was just self-defense. But he still stubbornly said, This thug is really tough. All right, let's see if you can stay that way after the next punch. He continued to hit Hyuk. Two of his men responsible for holding Hyuk's arms were also terrified, turning away, unable to bear watching. After punching and kicking Hyuk, he burst into laughter. Hyuk's face was covered in bruises. He kept questioning, Now tell me, why did you do that? Hyuk still gave the same answer as before. As I said, it was legitimate self-defense. He frowned, unable to tell right from wrong, saying, Look, the more you resist, the more you'll just hurt yourself. I don't understand why. I'll ask one last time. Did you attack them first with a weapon? Hyuk still answered that I had told the whole truth. Bio was even holding a knife. He kept shouting incoherently, Damn it, he really takes me back to the old days. Hey, tie him to the chair, his subordinate asked him. Why does anyone really want to tie him up? Seeing his subordinate like that, Bio's father got annoyed, using his authority to say, Don't make me repeat myself. You all think you can disregard me, right? The subordinates were too scared, so they had no choice but to follow. They tied Hyuk to the chair with ropes. Then he pulled out a sharp needle and threatened, Kim Hyuk, this is your own doing. You know that, right? Don't blame me. He firmly held Hyuk's hand. Then he took the long needle, intending to poke it into Hyuk's arm. Suddenly Hyuk chuckled softly. He saw that and got very angry. You bastard, why are you laughing? Are you so scared that you've lost your mind? Hyuk grinned and said, like father, like son. Both of them enjoy waving around those tiny silly tools. Hyuk's father couldn't swallow his anger and yelled, You're such a bastard. Keep a tight grip on it. Luckily, Kim Seop suddenly burst through the door. Bio's father shouted, What's going on? Don't bother me, I'm not done yet. Kim was about to explain when a tall man with a confident stride walked in. Boss Kim said, You see, the district attorney is here. Turns out the tall man is Chang Ho, the chief prosecutor of the Busan District Prosecutor's Office. Bio's father, feeling a bit uneasy, hesitantly said, Chang Ho, why are you here? And suddenly Prosecutor Chang Ho punched him straight in the face, glasses flying one way, head tilting to the side. Chang Ho shouted, You crazy bastard, do you think this is the Fifth Republic? What the hell are you doing with a minor? You bastard, if you want to die, do it alone, Why cause trouble in Busan? Do you know I'm about to head to Seoul? Bio's father still doesn't understand what's happening, innocently asking, hold on, Chief Prosecutor, what exactly are you doing here? Prosecutor Chang Ho grabbed his shirt tightly and said, do you know whose nephew he is? If you knew, you wouldn't do that. Bio's father, still clueless, replied, who is that thug that you're so worked up about? Chang Ho shouted, Chairman Chan of Changdong there. Hearing that, Bio's father broke into a cold sweat, stammering in confusion. Chairman John Tasan? How is he involved? Prosecutor Chang Ho pointed at Haya-uk and said, that student is the grandson of Chairman Jian, that idiot. Hearing that, Bio's father was stunned, unable to believe that it was true. Haya-uk scoffed at him. He turned pale with fear, unable to speak. At the grand estate, right in the living room, Haya-uk and Taisan were sitting and talking to each other. Taisan spoke first, saying, tell me, why did this happen? The young man bowed his head and said, I'm asking for your help because the prosecutor is trying to conduct an unfair investigation by abusing his power. Taisan looked straight at him with a serious expression and said, you can't avoid this, can you? He glanced at the man, and say you'll avoid it if they target you, but if they pull those around you in to get to you, you can't stay quiet because you can't avoid it, so you have to crush them so they never come after you again. You looked up at him and saw his unhappy face. I don't want those around me to be affected because of me. I want to protect my family and friends no matter what happens. Your face suddenly turned serious. That's the way of life I've chosen. He looked at him for a moment without saying anything. You continued by saying that you owed him a big debt, but for the purpose of protecting your loved ones, you would do everything you could. After listening to you, Taisan slowly asked what you would do if he didn't help, and added that your life would end just like that. You look up at him, which means our relationship can only go this far. The boy's confident statement just startled him a bit. If you turn away when you could easily help, you will have no place in your family. Hearing this, he couldn't help but burst out laughing, leaving him a bit puzzled. He then burst out laughing, a laugh full of satisfaction. A man should never back down, he said, looking at the boy with sharp eyes and a cunning smile. You must use whatever you can. Haya-uk looked at him with slight discomfort, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. He thought what he said was serious, but he knew this was his philosophy of life in his previous life. Taisan continued, saying that if you can't avoid them, you must crush them thoroughly so they can't follow you anymore. A half-hearted victory or showing forgiveness only gives them an excuse to attack you again. He emphasized to tighten it up, and if it's difficult, uproot and eliminate them by any means. After giving instructions to his grandson, he turned to the person standing next to him, Director Ha, and asked how things were going in Busan. Director Ha immediately responded that Prosecutor Hong is currently under internal investigation. He has been involved in several controversies such as bribery, torture, and case manipulation since his time at the Seoul Public Security Bureau, so there is no issue in arresting him. Chief Prosecutor Chang Ho is also waiting for your decision. Taisan asked, how's school going? The son of Prosecutor Hong was the mastermind and has been expelled from school. All involved students have dropped out. Last year's homeroom teacher who gave a one-sided testimony against Haya-uk has been arrested. He took so many bribes that we immediately issued an arrest warrant. Director Ha is well aware of the issues that Mr. Taisan is concerned about. Having gathered enough information, he turned to ask Haya-uk if he was satisfied. You still have one more request? You asked him if he would let you handle the matter with Chief Prosecutor Jang Ho, right? He was a bit puzzled when he heard this request and wondered why the boy wanted that. One day at the Tisan pufferfish shop, in the private room sat Director Ha and a man sitting across from him. Eung-hun spoke first. What are you planning to do with Prosecutor Hong? The person sitting opposite carefully responded that he was currently being arrested and investigated, and to set an example, we will punish him appropriately. Eung-hun reminded, throughout the entire process, the young master's name must not be mentioned even once. Understood? The other person confirmed it for sure. Eung-hun got the answer he wanted, shifted the topic to something else, and there was someone else who wanted to meet him. He stood up and pulled the door open. Outside, a dark figure was sitting, seemingly having waited there for a long time. Director Ha introduces Haya-uk. You walked into the room and sat across from the man. The conversation started with the man. He seemed a bit rushed as he said, Haya-uk, I'm truly sorry for what happened last time. It was my fault. As long as I'm still the chief prosecutor in Busan, this will never happen again. Haya-uk calmly responded, just talk to me normally. I know you didn't do anything. My grandfather isn't someone who holds grudges. The chief prosecutor's voice trembled slightly, but after all, you are his nephew. He won't let it slide. Haya-uk bowed. That's why I told you I wanted to meet you in person, chief prosecutor. Because of me, you got into a difficult situation, and I feel the need to apologize to you. He saw your actions and started fumbling, slightly panicking, and said, no, why are you apologizing? It's all my fault for failing to manage my subordinates. Even if I apologize to you 100,000 times, it wouldn't be enough. Haya-uk calmly lifted his head, thanked him for saying that, and said he had to pass on his uncle's sincere apology to his grandfather, but he didn't know how. So, Chief Prosecutor? The man hesitated slightly before asking what was going on. Hayuk said with a blank expression. One day, I might consider granting you a favor, with no conditions. The Chief Prosecutor didn't understand why Hayuk needed a favor, so he explained that the favor wouldn't affect him at all, but it would be something only he could do. Cold sweat began to run down the Chief Prosecutor's temples. He gave a strained smile and said, "Of course, if it's something only you can do, I'd be happy to help." You politely thanked him and made sure to tell your grandfather, so he wouldn't have to worry, ensuring that your uncle wouldn't bear any responsibility for this incident. He briefly replied that he understood and thanked her, saying he felt more relieved now. You ended the conversation very politely, hoping we'll meet again under better circumstances. You're about to get promoted to Sion, right? He cautiously replied that he hoped so. You finished your work and quickly stood up, getting ready to leave, not forgetting to say goodbye. I'll head out first. I have to go to school tomorrow. I've missed several days because of this. The boy had not finished his sentence when the man interrupted him and said, "Oh right, you're still a student. See you again someday in the future." Then he gave a forced smile. He quickly stepped out of the room. You just left, and the man's expression changed instantly. His facial muscles tightened as he carefully considered you. Hayuk is incredibly calm and has great social skills, even though he's just a high school student. Truly the bloodline of Chairman Cheon, the king of Myeongdong loan sharks. After that, Hayuk's student life had no more issues. You returned to your daily life, studying diligently at the small desk by the window. You returned to the days with your friends in class, listening to lectures. When not studying, you rest your chin on your hand in boredom, and when tired, you lay your head on the desk and sleep. Back to school activities. Day by day are evening news reports with the latest information. Political issue, about the music, and there is also sports. Finally, the university entrance exam took place, and Hayuk successfully passed the final academic proficiency test. When it is replaced by the new college scholastic ability test CS8T, inside the luxurious villa, at Taeson's office, Yoonghun reports to the chairman. I checked Hayuk's admission score to Korea University through a professor. He was quite excited when he heard the news and asked if it was true, and if Hayuk got accepted. Holding the paper in hand, he suddenly frowned, staring intently at the paper, not knowing what was written on it that made him react like that. Another day, a large crowd of reporters gathered at the school gate, all like wolves intently scanning the schoolyard for prey. In the most recent academic proficiency exam, I ranked first and was the only person to achieve a perfect score since the test's inception. How do you feel about that? Hayuk, suddenly faced with a recorder, looked at it with a strange expression, his face emotionless. You scored a perfect 340 points in the final academic assessment, setting a new record. Reporters had been waiting for him, and as soon as he appeared, they swarmed around, bombarding him with questions. Cameras and microphones were pushed close to his face, along with hundreds of questions, making it hard for him to answer them all. How did you study coming from a technical high school? What is your study secret? Did you have a private tutor? He scratched his head, trying to answer as much as possible. No, I've never had a private tutor or attended any academy. I just studied with textbooks. A reporter with a recorder approached. Can you say something to encourage the younger students who are preparing for next year's exams? He was a bit taken aback by the question and exclaimed, "Let me see." After thinking, he flashed a fake smile, but it was as if an aura radiated from behind him. Hey kids, studying is the easiest thing in the world. Returning to Mr. Taeson's study, he kept staring at the score report, then smirked and said, "Look at that. The streets at night are crowded, bustling with vehicles, and the streetlights along with the bright billboards create a lively scene." In a bar called Reborn, Hayuk went with his two friends, Ungso and Hun-sung. His friends excitedly raised their glasses high and shouted, "Cheers to our eternal friendship, forever the best." They were both thrilled. But he was different. His pensive mood didn't match the atmosphere around him. He cautiously turned to Ungso saying, "Hey, suddenly shouting like that is so embarrassing I could die." Ungso glanced at him, smirking. "We've buried ourselves in studies for 3 years. Let's cut loose a bit today." The young man raised his glass and confidently said, "This is my dad's place. I'll take care of the drinks and seating. Look, this is expensive whiskey just for us." He thought to himself, in his past life, he drank a lot, from soju to whiskey, each bottle costing tens of millions of won. He turned to his friend and agreed to get drunk together. Just as he brought the glass to his lips and sipped the beautiful amber liquid, he thought it had been a long time since he last drank. The taste of the first sip of whiskey in this life slowly made its way down his throat. After a sip, he paused, sensing something off about the drink in his hand. He realized it was fake. Looking at his friend, whose face was flushed and holding a bottle of liquor, Ungso smiled brightly despite the burning sensation in his throat. "Too strong, huh?" He felt a bit awkward answering, but it wasn't bad, just plain like water. While he appeared calm, his mind was working things out. "This is Ungso's dad's place. I'll pretend to drink and swallow a small sip. A man approached the three, with his arm around a beautiful girl followed by two others just as pretty. He called out loudly, "Ung-so, this is the most beautiful girl among our customers today. Take good care of her, will you?" Seeing a pretty girl, Ung-so and Hun-seong's eyes lit up with excitement, unable to contain their delight. Only Hyuk seemed uninterested, looking at his two friends with a helpless expression. The atmosphere in the bar was incredibly lively, with colorful lights flashing to the music. At Hyuk's table, the girl who was introduced earlier picked up the bottle on the table and poured a drink for him. Smiling, she asked, "You look so young. How old are you?" He reluctantly replied, "I'm 20. When Hyuk was still in shock, Ung-so next to him leaned forward and confidently said, "We're 22. We just started college a few days." Ung-so was about to say something about them going to Seoul, but before he could finish, Hyuk next to him covered his friend's mouth with his hand and said with a slight frown, "Just a small school outside of Seoul." I was happily chatting with the beautiful girl who had just been brought in, when a tall man suddenly yelled at her, "What are you doing here?" The man with an incredibly fierce face, possibly followed by his subordinates, looked straight at the most beautiful girl. I wondered why she said she was going to the restroom but never came back. Turns out she was here hanging out with the young guys. One of the three girls stood up, her tone irritated. "It's true, we can't sit here anymore because the air is polluted." Nu was adding fuel to the fire, and the other person angrily shouted, "What did you just say?" The girl was about to leave, her eyebrows furrowed in visible discomfort. "I already left without drinking anything, so you should understand that she probably doesn't like your crazy ugly face and—" "Give up, you look like a wild boar, don't you realize that?" The guy, hearing the girl in front of him insult him like that, got really angry and shouted, "Are you done talking, you little brat?" Hyuk sensed that the situation was getting increasingly tense. He realized he was getting involved in unnecessary trouble, and the quickest way out was to leave immediately. "You got up and apologized, but now I have to go. You want to get out of here as quickly as possible. But life isn't like a dream." When he got up from his seat, turned around, and told Ung-so to stand up and leave, his friend didn't even bother to look up. Head bowed, cursing, "Damn it." Then he loudly cursed the man and his thugs, calling them trash. Your words instantly made the man even angrier, his face muscles all tensed up. "What did you just say?" Hyuk felt something was wrong, bent down to help his friend. "Hey, what's up, drunk already? Let's go." Ung-so's face was flushed and he kept saying, "Did I say something wrong? Why care about others when we're just here to drink?" Hyuk struggled to pull his drunken friend off the chair, reminding him that he would ruin his father's business if he stayed any longer. "That's enough, let's go quickly." Hun-sung had already gotten up and left the chair, leaving only Ung-so, who was too drunk to think straight, but then decided to go back with Hyuk. As the three were about to leave the bar, a beer bottle suddenly flew straight to the ground right next to where they were walking. Turning around, it was the man from earlier, still not planning to let the three newly graduated students go. "Hey you punks, where do you think you're going? Come here, you jerk." His harsh words annoyed Hyuk a bit, but he didn't want to get involved, so he just looked at him without saying anything more. The situation was getting more intense, so the waiter rushed out to intervene, shouting, "Oh my god, Byun, why are you here? That's the son of our boss and his friend. They must be drunk celebrating their graduation." He ignored the staff member's words, shoving him hard, causing him to fall to the ground, his body hitting the floor with a painful thud. He snarled, "Get out, you bastard!" He didn't stop there. He raised his foot and kept kicking the employee, yelling at him, "Do you think I'm a joke?" The employee's body wasn't too small, but standing next to him, he was completely overpowered, only able to lie on the ground taking the beating without being able to fight back. The guests in the restaurant, seeing the situation gradually becoming chaotic, were terrified and ran outside, fearing they might be the next victim of the thug. Seeing that all the guests had left, a well-dressed man in a suit ran out to stop Byun. "My god, Byun, you're doing it again, stop." The man's face was dotted with sweat. Byun stopped hitting and shouted at the man in front of him, "Lee, don't you know we have taken over Modong? Since we met, it was agreed that I would be the one supplying drinks here, but you can't treat me like this." Hyuk looked at the thug once over. So this is the guy selling fake whiskey, he thought to himself. Ung-so, next to him, witnessed everything that just happened with wide-open eyes, seemingly sobering up a bit, because the man who had just appeared was Ung-so's father. He was in big trouble now. Ung-so's father tried to calm the big thug down. I know. My son is still impulsive, so maybe the kid caused some trouble. Please forgive him. Calm down. Go inside, I'll take care of everything." Taking Byun along for a while, Ung-so's father turned around and shouted, "What are you all standing there for? Go home quickly. Ung-so, go home and wait." Hyuk patted his friend on the shoulder. "Let's go, Ung-so." Ung-so, still feeling a bit upset, frowned and lowered his head. Suddenly, Byun turned around, pointing at Hyuk and Ung-so. "Where do you think you're going? Stop right there." Ung-so's father, with no other choice, tried to calm the thug down. "Byun, let's settle this between us. The kids don't know anything. Please come inside." A loud smack echoed through the cafe, drawing the attention of three young men. The man slapped Ungso's father hard in the face, leaving him stunned, clutching his cheek. Lee, are you mocking me? I've overlooked other things out of respect because you're older. But you shouldn't behave like this. He was still furious, yelling about something, and now, at his age, he just got slapped by a younger guy. You should have treated me better when I was still decent, he said through gritted teeth as he kicked the old man hard, sending his body sliding painfully across the ground. Due to Byeon's recent actions, the beast within Ungso awoke. Furious, he clenched his fist and charged straight at the thug, shouting loudly as he ran. But what can your cat punch do against someone as experienced as him? He easily dodged that attack. The force made him lose balance and fall to the ground, his body hitting the hard stone floor. The thug stepped forward, grabbed Ungso's hair, and yanked him up. Hey, son of Lee, today I'm going to teach you an important lesson. If you mess with someone before knowing who they are, you're going to get punched like this. Seeing his son about to be beaten, as a father, Mr. Lee couldn't accept it. He struggled to get up, knelt at Byeon's feet, clasped his hands together, and begged Byeon to stop. He sincerely apologized. Please let my son go, just punish me instead. Byeon looked down at the man who had discarded all his dignity, kneeling at his feet with disdain. The father-son bond between them moved me. He then released Ungso, raised his 5 fingers to act upon Mr. Lee again, as he wished. He was about to strike when his arm was suddenly gripped tightly. Hyuk, you slowly said that's enough, you've gone too far. He turned to him with a look of both surprise and anger, asking what are you doing, holding my hand. Maybe this is the first time someone has dared to grab his hand like this. Let go of his hand and slowly said, no matter how angry you are, you shouldn't hit a father in front of his son. Are you done? Don't stop here. The thug rubbed his temples, thinking that kids these days must not know fear. Then he continued his thuggish behavior, raising his fist high, about to punch Hyuk. Do you know who I am? Showing off in front of me, huh? His expression was incredibly calm as the punch grazed past his face. Hyuk easily dodged the opponent's attack, his face almost taunting as he gently followed the trajectory of the punch. Seeing you dodge, he cursed again, damn it. This brat, today's the end for you. Ba's disciples who've been watching just charged forward. Just a few seconds later, his underlings were knocked out, leaving him startled and worried. When the thug was still trying to gather his senses, someone from behind gently knocked him out with a single blow. He made him fall to the ground. You watched the thug getting beaten. Then he looked up at the other person, and that guy spoke up, hey you dog, Sung-ho. His eyes widened in surprise, unsure of who stood before him, leaving him utterly astonished. The man slowly approached, followed by 2 disciples. He twisted his wrist and flashed a sinister smile, asking, you must have had a lot of fun while I was away, huh? He is Dongsu. Byeon and Dongsu kept glaring at each other with eyes like bullets. Dongsu taunted Byeon, why haven't you been caught yet? Are you such a low-key thug that even the police overlook you, huh? Byeon, with a furious expression and a scowl, said, back Dongsu, now it's my turn. Dongdu casually replied, so what? Modong didn't belong to you before. Then Dongsu leaned close to Byeon's ear and said, I'm here now, so you better get out of here before I smash your head into something. Byeon heard this and was furious, trying to hold back his anger. Then Dongsu turned to greet everyone there. Hyuk dear, how have you been lately? It's great to see you again. Would you like to have a glass of soju? Hyuk and Dongsu sat down together for a drink. Dongsu said, I saw the news, top in the nation, huh? I thought you were a strange kid, but I didn't expect you to be that smart. Hyuk asked Dongsu, when did you come back? Dongsu replied, it's been quite a while, but it took some time to quietly and discreetly reclaim the old territories. Hyuk, curious, asked, did you also manage this area? Dongsu, sipping his drink, calmly replied, yeah, from Maodong to Sudong and Cheongdong, the whole area was originally mine. I thought it would take time to reclaim it, but everyone got taken away, so there was no big fight. The Sasung gang you were once part of has been completely wiped out. If it weren't for you warning me, I'd be in prison by now. You saved my life. What do you want me to do for you now? Hyuk was confused, not understanding why Dongsu asked that. Dongsu responded, you saved my life, I have to repay you, I can't live while owing you. Hearing that, Hyuk just smiled. Then he asked Dongsu, how long do you think it will take to control the entire Busan area? Dongsu said irritably, hey, I asked what you want, why are you worrying about other people's business? Hyuk, with a sharp gaze, said, that's what I want right now. Dongsu replied that it would take at least half a year, or about a year if there were any problems, and by then, all of them would have been caught. Only the small fry are left now. Hyuk, pleased with what he heard, said, good, quickly take over Busan, make sure to bribe the police and prosecutors well, and ensure that you manage everything more carefully. Lastly, never get caught. Don't get involved with drugs, soon they'll eradicate it in an unprecedented way. Even if you have connections with the police or prosecutors, it's still very hard to escape this crime. While waiting, get ready to move from darkness to light. Dongsu smirked, held his face, and said, Starlight, let me tell you. People like us can never step into the light. If you do, someone just like you will emerge from the shadows to rise up, meaning the war will start all over again. Hyuk told Dongsu, "It's just a disguise. If you follow all the rules, then what's the point of becoming a gangster in the first place? Gangs in Seoul have begun the process of becoming companies. Busan also needs to hurry up, otherwise the gangs in Seoul will dominate. Hire a competent lawyer and start the incorporation process right now. After taking over all of Busan, move on to Seoul." Dongsu was drinking when he heard the word Seoul and choked. Dongsu shouted, "Hey Hyuk, you think it's that easy? Seon is a battlefield. People from all over the country are fighting there." Hyuk poured more wine for Dongsu and reassured him, "Don't worry, I'll help you, trust me, and get ready." Dongsu heard that and chuckled, then said, "What you said makes no sense, but somehow I find it very convincing. Sounds so right. Sure, here's the translated text in English. Alright, sounds good, let's give it a try, onward to Seoul." They drank together, sharing many deep thoughts. Suddenly Hyuk said there was a condition. Dongsu was a bit surprised. Hyuk made it clear and straightforward that during that process, my name or identity must not be revealed. No matter what happens, there is no connection between you and me. Hyuk drank in silence, thinking to himself, no one will find me until I'm ready to face the Chan family. The scene shifts to a magnificent, splendid mansion. Now Kim Hyuk has become famous across the media world, with one article even titled, "An Interview with Hyuk," the first person to achieve a perfect score since the academic ability test was introduced. Mr. Taeson read the article and burst out laughing. Director Eung-hun was surprised and asked, "Are you happy?" Taeson immediately replied, "Of course, why wouldn't I be?" Not only is he the only one in the family to get into Korea's law school, but the kid also achieved the top score nationwide. Today I felt very refreshed after talking on the phone with the old man from the Samsung group. You know, they look down on us so much, thinking our family has nothing but a bunch of arrogant people with money. They always brag about their kids getting into prestigious universities, studying abroad and all that. Director Eung-hun said, "But those people came here to borrow money from the president, right?" Taeson replied, "That's right. They look down on me behind my back, but when they need something, they come begging and wait for hours. They're that kind of people. I had to start working to earn money before finishing elementary school. My children aren't very good at studying either. Without my money, none of them would have made it into college." The director Eung-sun said, "But wasn't it Jisoo, his second daughter, who got into Korea University last year in second place, and at that time he gave her 1% of Samsung shares as a reward?" Hearing that, Taeson smiled and said, "That's right, Jisoo is a smart kid. But I really like this kid Hyuk. It would be amazing if he wasn't just a grandson, but a direct descendant of the Chan family." Then Taeson pondered for a moment, and asked Director Eung-sun about something else. "What the news says about the president-elect?" Eung-sun replied. "He's still quietly focusing on selecting members of the transition committee. You were told about those 2 positions, Chairman," and Mr. Taeson was a bit surprised. 2 positions, huh? The director said, "Yes, because this time it's a civilian government. If we demand too much," before he could finish, Chairman Taeson interrupted, "I understand, no need to say more." "Which position do you think is best?" Eun-seon replied. "I think appointing someone as the economic director and political director would be pretty good." Mr. Taeson asked again, "Politburo?" Director Eung-sun continued, "Yes, the Politburo controls the police and prosecutors, so it will be most useful, don't you think?" Chairman Taeson agreed with the proposal and said, "Okay, let's do it. They'll go directly to the Blue House, right?" Eung-sun nodded and said, "Yes." Then the chairman continued, "By the way, how are Sohan and Soman doing these days?" Director Eung-sun, with a concerned expression, informed the chairman that the second boss seems to be preparing a new business project. However, seeing Eung-sun hesitating, the chairman asked directly, "Is there a problem?" Eung-sun told Chairman Taeson the truth, saying that this job seems to be connected to the mafia. Hearing that, the chairman was shocked and angrily shouted, "What? A gangster? Haven't most of the gangs been caught already?" Director Eung-sun said. "There is a gang quietly growing under the protection of Ajua Quinn Society." Hearing the name of this company made Chairman Taeson even more furious. How could they be involved with them? Director Eung-sun added that it seems they are involved in the gambling machine business. Mr. Taeson could no longer sit still. Extremely furious when he heard the word slot machine, he gritted his teeth, trying to stay calm and said, "They've gone that far, gambling really." Eung-sun told the chairman everything, that he bribed Congressman Kim, his father-in-law, and he led the licensing efforts. Congressman Kim secured a lot of political funds. Mr. Taeson smacked his lips a few times and said, "It handles the trashy work for its wife's family. I have warned them many times not to get involved with that damn company. But they just can't help it." Eung-sun asked the chairman, "Should we handle this?" Chairman Taeson replied, "No, from now on, keep an eye on them to ensure they don't cause any more trouble." At this moment, Mr. Taeson was extremely angry. His mind was only thinking about how to deal with that devilish company. He recalled that, when he was young, he shouldn't have borrowed their power. The chairman sighed deeply, feeling burdened. He tormented himself, believing all of this was his karma. Before he dies, he will break this chain of misery at any cost. A while later at the grand and magnificent mansion of the Cheon Family Corporation, At the same time, a familiar figure returned to this place and called out, "Grandpa." Now Hyuk has undergone a major transformation in appearance. I'm back. His appearance took Taesan by surprise. "Yeah, come in. It seems he's expecting something from you. We've been waiting for you." The scene shifts to the grandfather and grandson walking into the office to talk. "Have you found a place to live in Seoul yet? I'll find you an apartment or a studio near the school. Just tell me where you want to stay. I'll also send a housekeeper so you can focus solely on your studies." Before his proposal, Hyuk replied, "If you don't mind, I'd like to live in this house," which left him a bit surprised. He confided to his grandfather that ever since his first visit to this house, he had always wanted to live here. "Since my mother has lived here since she was young, I feel like I'm closer to her, and I think it would be great to see you more often." Through what Hyuk said, Taesan gradually grew more fond of him. This kid really knows how to flatter the old man, just do as he says. He suddenly remembered that in his previous life, this house was a place he could only visit when called by his grandfather. He wasn't invited to family gatherings and was completely an outsider, treated merely as the Cheon family's butler. But as the grandson of the top graduate of Korea University Law School, his pride, the way they treat you will surely be different. Suddenly he lowered his voice and said, "So now tell me. Admitted to Korea University Law School, you've kept the promise you made 3 years ago. So, what gift do you want?" In response to Taesan's question, Hyuk just scoffed. Then he replied, "I guess you're very curious to call me right after the graduation ceremony ends." Now, he also admits, "Of course, I'm curious." Seoul National University Law School. A perfect score on the college entrance exam isn't something you can achieve just with determination. How could I not be curious about what you have been studying so hard for? Tell me what you need, what you want. In this moment, I'm confident in telling him, I want to learn his trade. This is what caused Taesan to become bewildered. Director Ha stood beside him, still in shock. He stood there in shock and asked, "My apprentice?" The attitude of Hyuk at this moment is extremely serious, yes. Because he couldn't trust them yet, he asked, "Do you know exactly what my job is?" Lending money at high interest rates isn't just about lending and collecting money. Although he still refuses to give up, I don't know for sure. But I think the job he's doing isn't just an ordinary one, so I'm even more eager to learn and understand. The determination of Hyuk seems to have gradually convinced his strict grandfather. He thought to himself, "You've been thinking a lot about what I need to take over his property and get revenge on the Cheon brothers. What should I ask him for? Money, people, real estate, or stocks will increase in value in the future. Making money isn't really a problem if you use the information about the future that I know. Stocks, real estate, commodities, forex. But in the end, all that wealth will be exposed, and then my uncles Cheon Suman and Cheon Suhan will try to control me. I still don't have the power or influence to protect myself, and the money to fight my uncles must be secret money that no one knows about. The best choice I can make right now is to pretend to be his apprentice, stay close to him, seize his fruits of labor, and make him follow my will." At this moment, Taesan calmly said, "I want to learn your trade. That could be considered a reward for your 3-year-long bet, right? You can ask for something bigger, something you can hold on to right now." However, Hyuk countered, "I believe learning how to fish rather than receiving a fish in front of me would be more beneficial." This statement of yours made him reflect, then turned to Chairman Ha and asked, "What do you think?" He, after a few minutes of thinking, suggested that it might be too early. "I think it would be enough if he starts after graduating from college." And then Hyuk spoke up, "I'm not really interested in studying anymore. I want to start right now." "What are you talking about? That's the law school of Korea University. Are you sure you have no intention of becoming a judge or a lawyer?" Even so, he still stubbornly admitted that getting accepted into a Korean university was just a way to prove his abilities and determination to his grandfather. "What I want to become is someone with great power like Gong." Because of what you just said, Taesan was stunned and couldn't say anything more. A moment later, Hyuk quietly continued, "Of course, if you want me to become a lawyer, I'll follow through. I'll be ready to take the bar exam anytime." He immediately spoke up, "You talk about the judicial exam as if it's a meal that's already been served." The maturity of Hyuk surprised Director Ha. This man is truly unpredictable. Is he someone with a vision far beyond what I had imagined? Not long after, Taesan had no choice but to agree. "Fine, let's give it a try." He suggested that Director Ha should assign him the job you're currently doing, sir. Transition to Director Ha's office. Inside, he is preparing what you need to be able to do this job. He considers that the work the president is doing is basically lending money, or to put it negatively, loan sharking. Although it's usury, it operates within the legal framework, so you need to study the law carefully. Since it's a transaction involving a large sum of money, solid collateral is required. Collateral can be real estate or various types of bonds. We also accept stocks, but due to significant fluctuations, we only accept them when they could affect the company's ownership. The chairman directly negotiates with major domestic corporations. We handle emergency loans or loans that banks are unable to cover, with a minimum amount of tens of billions of won per day, and a maximum of hundreds of billions of won. At a time when major banks had not yet developed, The real center of the financial industry was the loan sharks in Myeongdong. Like my grandfather, most of the country's large corporations were able to grow thanks to a symbiotic relationship with these loan sharks. Director Ha added that what you need to learn is the coordination process before the chairman deals with large domestic corporations. You need to learn how to read the legal books related to collateral. Right then, he brought out a stack of documents and placed them directly on the table. Also request Hae-yuk, this is the current book of contracts and legal documents related to the mortgage. Please review everything within 3 days, and summarize the key points and send them to me. This makes him quite dissatisfied, even though it's something I already knew, but I guess I have to pretend to study hard and review. A week has passed. In Chairman Taeson's office he asked, "So how do you feel after teaching my nephew?" He calmly replied, "He has the ability to see through cash flows and uncover the hidden picture in many documents. Those things require experience, so it's hard to learn in a short time, but the young master seems to understand them as if he already knew everything." Hearing the information from Director Ha was very surprising, really. Director Ha then informed him that the young master was also very confident and comfortable in front of the business leaders he met to greet. "I don't need to help the young master when I'm by his side. It seems the young master will learn all the practical tasks I can teach in just a few days." So, Taeson suggested, "Can we now assign my nephew the job in Myeongdong?" However, he still felt uneasy. Isn't it too soon? Will the bosses at Myeongdong recognize the young master? So he calmly questioned, "If I want to pass my job on to my grandson, why would I need their approval?" But Director Ha still seemed worried. Even Cheon So-man and Cheon So-han found it hard to handle those people. Can the young master handle it? Although he remained determined, if we must confront them at some point, isn't it better to do so sooner rather than later? Go meet the bosses in Myeongdong and collect all their savings books. Yes, I understand. Now his face revealed an expression of excitement. Let's see if this kid Haiwook is really useful or not. Transition to a large company in a city. Inside So-man's office he just received a call. Really? Going to Myeongdong? A moment later he hung up in frustration, then slowly walked out to the balcony, seemingly lost in thought. What exactly are you planning to do with a child?